Hey there, kids. It's time to sit because Battleground Casual is on. Here's Aaron or Matt.
Or me.
I can start the show.
Hey.
I don't have to wait for some dumb bit. Oh, this is great. Ladies and
I
gentlemen.
mean, I could do a dumb bit if you want me to do a dumb bit.
Perfect.
Okay.
Welcome back,
All right.
ladies and gentlemen, to the 18th edition of Battleground Casual. I am Aaron Knoll. And see, the good thing is because Matt and I have technically both do recorded things for the show, we will always be here in spirit. However, Matt is not here in person this week. I should say, despite the fact that he has audibly protested seeing The Flash in the past, that is not the reason he's not here. Something else, scheduling-wise, actually came up. He would have been here for the first part of the show anyways. But he's not here, so I'm joined by Austin Howell tonight as my co-host. Austin, how are you doing?
Oh, good, man. Always happy to help out with co-hosting duties as I do for most of my YouTube life right now. So happy to fill in, sir.
Absolutely, guys. So we got topics on the board tonight, including towards the end of the show, a spoiler discussion on The Flash. So be aware, as always, there will be spoilers in this discussion. But first, before we get into it, we have the first set of stories, which are the non-starters. These are news stories that came out this week that are worth mentioning because they are news stories. If for whatever reason we are the place you come to get your movie news, these are things that happened this week in the world of movie news, but there wasn't enough misinformation necessarily to talk about the stuff itself. So let's jump into it. The first one being, as I go ahead and pull up my notes here, non-starter number one, Twitter scooper Casey Walsh reported this week that actor Ben Affleck was reportedly seen on the set of Deadpool 3 this week. Following the cameos of Matt Damon and Brad Pitt in Deadpool 2, this isn't actually an insane idea. What is more insane is rumors that followed from subsequent less reliable sources claiming that Affleck was actually reprising his role as Daredevil in the film due to the movie's multiversal aspects. No legit sources have been able to confirm this as of now. A Superman hopeful in non-starter number two has gone very, very public with his aspirations. Actor Pearson Faudet, who reportedly was ranked highly on the list at DC after a good submission tape, has released part of that tape publicly. It was released by way of a tech company who used it as advertising for a technological development to make flying and green screen sets look more realistic. Faudet using some of the test screen footage that he ran for their ad as a part of his tape. Faudet can be seen demoing the device and clearly mimicking Superman in his poses and movements. It remains to be seen if going public will help or hurt him. The adaptation of the musical Wicked in non-starter number three has changed its release dates. The two-part adaptation of the Broadway hit was originally set to release on Christmas Day in 2024 and 2025, but now each part moves up a month to the week of Thanksgiving 2024 and 2025 in an attempt to avoid any major blockbusters sitting in December, including Avatar 3 in that 2025 date. And for the final non-starter, while we wait on confirmation of Transformers Rise of the Beast continuing, Transformers will continue with Transformers 1, an animated film directed by Toy Story 4 director Josh Cooley. Now that we've learned more about the movie, we know that it'll release on September 13th, 2024. The basic cast has also been announced, and it will be a complete reinvention of the series. Scarlett Johansson stars as a new Transformer to the big screen, Alita being pulled from the animation, comics, and other sources. Actors Chris Hemsworth, Brian Tyree Henry, and Keegan-Michael Key take on the roles of Optimus Prime, Megatron, and Bumblebee, respectively. John Hamm will voice Sentinel Prime, last voice in film by Leonard Nimoy, and Lawrence Fishburne voices a new Transformer yet unnamed. We'll discuss the film more in detail in the future once we know more, but for tonight, that is simply a non-starter. So with that said, Austin, since you are my co-host, you will be the one discussing the box office with me tonight. So let's go ahead and jump into it right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's Way Too Late Weekly Box Office Report. For the second week in a row, my graphics didn't download correctly, so I have decided to replace my photo editing app with a different app. However, I did not feel like recreating all the images this week, so instead, you're going to get this happy smiling face of mine while I speak behind it. With that said, let's jump into the box office report from last week. We had not one, but two disappointing openings for major films last week. The Flash was projected to open somewhere around $75 million, which was disappointing even with that total, but it came in well below that at a $55 million opening for the first place finish last weekend. The Ezra Miller-led film has suffered from a mix of dying hype, middling reviews, long-standing production issues, non-production related issues, and stiff competition at the box office. And due to all of that, it did suffer. Literally the only upside that DC can take from this film is that it didn't do as bad as Shazam did back in March. Elemental, which debuted in second place, also disappointed, coming in at $29.6 million, about $8 million below where it was projected to debut. So far, though, Elemental is looking to be the better of the two, as it costs less to make and is holding up so far in week 2. We'll discuss that, though, next week. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse holds well in week 3, earning another $27 million to take third place. Transformers Rise of the Beast takes a big but unexpected drop, to come in fourth place with $20.7 million. The Little Mermaid comes in fifth place with $11.1 million, totaling its domestic total at $253 million after 4 weeks at the box office. Moving into the bottom 5, we have our third debuting film of the week, The Blackening, which picks up $6 million, a solid take for a smaller horror comedy debuting on under 2,000 screens. Guardians of the Galaxy Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and The Boogeyman drop out of the top 5, with Guardians taking 7th place for $5.3 million and The Boogeyman taking $3.6 million for 8th place. Fast X continues its disappointing run for a $2.1 million finish in 9th place, as it still sits under the $150 million domestic mark and is looking to drop out of the top 10 next week. Wes Anderson's Asteroid City opened in just 6 theaters last week, earning $853,000 on those 6 screens for 10th place, ahead of its wide release, which came this weekend. 4 films dropped out of the top 10 from last week. As I predicted, the Super Mario Bros. Movie finally hit its cliff, dropping out of the top 10 with its domestic total sitting at $572 million. The box office bombs About My Father and The Machine both dropped out as well, and the indie film Past Lives, which also went wide yesterday, dropped out of the top 10, coming in just behind Asteroid City in 11th place as it was in its final week of limited release. We'll see if it can make it back into the top 10 this upcoming. All right. Now, of course, that's a lot harder to follow when it's just me smiling instead of all the pretty posters and numbers. But yeah, I figured that was the best pose to go with. It was that, or I look like a 2000s douche with a peace sign. So, yeah. With that said, what stands out to you, Austin, about the box office this week?
I think it's official that Pixar movies are no longer event entertainment. Is that safe to say? Because man,
probably, yeah.
I used to remember when Pixar movies were an event and a thing, that it was a big deal when a new Pixar movie was coming out, kind of like, a new Tarantino movie coming out, a new, Christopher Nolan movie coming out, there's a new Pixar movie. I don't know if it's oversaturation with Pixar because they had so many that dropped on Disney Plus and people got used to that, to just waiting for it now. But yeah, I mean, that, and there's still family options around between Spider-Verse still doing well at the box office and the fact that, Super Mario still lingering around, but it also dropped on home viewing. It's available for rentals and purchase now, on digital and Blu-ray. So I just think Pixar movies have become kind of a non-event. I can see why they're going back to the well with Toy Story soon, but I'm not excited for that. But
another Philly.
They're hoping for some kind of a spark with that. I mean, we could probably talk more about the Flash box office when we get to the actual Flash spoiler review, because that might be more appropriate for that. But yeah, Spider-Verse is doing well, crossing $500 million at the worldwide box office, still making money. So good there. I think Little Mermaid is officially a flop. They can't hide that anymore. It is. When a movie costs $250 million to make, plus about 100 or 150 in marketing, needs about 600 at least to start breaking even. It has not done that. So it just is what it is. I was surprised to see Boogie, these little horror movies like The Boogeyman. I think it said worldwide. I was looking at Box Office Mojo, about 55 million worldwide. But I mean, most of these movies have $10-15 million budget, something like that. So
and that's where The Boogeyman.
Exactly, and you know, it just shows you can make these kind of little mid-budget horror movies. They usually do pretty well. They chug along at the box office. They make money, even if it's only a 10-20 million dollar profit. You know, for these smaller studios. I don't think that was a Blumhouse movie, but still, whatever studio it was, you know, those movies.
It was 20th Century.
Yeah, so I mean, those movies can be successful though, you know, especially when they
Yeah.
have those smaller budgets with not much star power behind them. But yeah, Guardians is probably kind of getting close to the end of its run here. You know, it's kind of
Probably.
run its course, especially when you've got Indiana Jones and Mission Impossible coming out. Probably going to push that one aside. But you know, it'll drop on Blu-ray and you know rental and Disney Plus. You know, pretty soon after that, I'm sure. And yeah, not much else to say. I mean, Asteroid City, I guess, is doing well, and it's still kind of in limited, but I saw it in a lot of theaters near me, so
I was
I
gonna
don't
say
know.
it went wide this weekend, but that wide's like barely wide. So
Yeah, yeah, I know it was at my Regal, it was at one or two of my other theaters, but yeah, I'm not a Wes Anderson guy, so it just is what it is. It's not
yeah,
my
you probably
bag.
wouldn't enjoy it then.
No, literally, when I saw the trailer for it and it looks like a parody of a Wes Anderson movie, I'm like, nah, that's not for
Yeah,
me. It literally looks like a straight
not far
parody
off
that
actually.
SNL would
Yeah.
do. Yeah, it's gotten to the point of comedic. Like what are we doing? Like we've gone full Anderson.
Like the only thing I can say is as somebody who doesn't love Wes, because I did see it, as somebody who doesn't love Wes Anderson, I thought always I do like some of his movies. I thought it was fine. You're right in that it is kind of a parody of his own style and structure at
Yeah.
times. All I can say is if you are this person that my next sentence is going to appeal to, you
Mhm.
will like Asteroid City because between this and No Hard Feelings, you get a double feature of full frontal nudity from two of Hollywood's most famous actresses. One of them is Jennifer Lawrence, the other is Scarlett Johansson. So if you are the person that enjoys that, go ahead, see Asteroid
Mhm.
City, help the box office out because it
Yeah,
needs it.
right.
But
Yeah, yeah. No,
outside of that, I think if you're a Wes Anderson fan, that's the only way
I
you'll
still
really love
argue
this.
that the greatest Wes Anderson thing is if you've seen the SNL parody where they did a trailer of what a Wes Anderson horror movie would be like, and it's called the Midnight Coterie of Sinister Intruders, and I would watch that movie because it would it would be hilarious. So Wes Anderson, make a horror movie and maybe in your goofy style, and I might go watch it. So that's all I can say.
Uh, in terms of the box office, I was going to say I didn't make it a story because I was going to bring it up here anyways. But Pete Docter, obviously director for Pixar, now the head of the studio as well, put out a statement after Elemental's box office this week. Which, first off, I appreciate that somebody is willing to be honest about things like this because I do think this is why the movie did bad. It's a mix of, and this is basically what he said. It's a mix of people's people's enjoyment of the film or perception of quality of the film, which I do think is true. Not necessarily that the film itself is bad. I quite enjoyed Elemental actually, but overall, there's a sentiment amongst the people that Pixar has dipped in quality, which I don't think you can refute overall. They have.
Mhm.
Um, and also that people, because of the pandemic, people have been trained, especially with kids' films, to wait for home video because there's a belief that it'll be out very quickly on home video. And Pete Docter even said, like, despite the box office not doing well, we're committed to hold this film in theaters for a certain run, as long as the theaters will hold us, basically, because we want to
Mhm.
train people to come back to the theaters to see these films, not to just wait on home video. Because it's not just them. With the exception of Puss in Boots, which did take a long time to turn a profit, DreamWorks has seen reduced profits. Blue Sky obviously went defunct during the pandemic, and the one other animated film Disney had, that Ron's Gone Wrong, that didn't turn a huge profit. It's basically just been Illumination because they appeal to the most basic common denominator, and they have Minions and Mario. So like,
I was gonna say Illumination and Universal has been doing quite well though. They've had multiple billion-dollar films in the last like 2 years with the two. Well, I didn't say two, but like that first Minions movie was a billion-dollar movie. The second one was,
that was a few years
and
ago, but yeah,
yeah, but the Rise of Gru one was, and then
and then
Super Mario was. So I mean, it's not that it's like all is lost for family movies. It's I think they've cracked a formula
that
that Disney
works.
has failed. Yeah, that Disney has failed to do, where they're trying to make this like super elevated stuff when, man, sometimes you just need a kids movie that's just like fun and breezy in 85 minutes, and like that kids can go to multiple times over and over again, and it just kind of is what it is. And like they don't always want to sit there and like teach you a bunch of morals. It's just like we're just going to entertain you for 85 minutes. I mean, say what you will about it, but like they've cracked a formula that's working. And if they end up doing this Zelda movie that they're talking about, like I think that'll kill it too. So
and I was gonna say
yeah.
Unrelated, but the last thing I'll talk about before we bring in our guests is because you talk about the Little Mermaid bombing, I'll talk about what I think is even the bigger bomb at the box office, which is Fast X. The fact that that movie's been in theaters over a month now and it's not even earned 150 million domestic, that is a bad showing for that film. And
well,
this
it's
is
a
on the
bad
heels
showing
of
domestic, but they still make money internationally. Worldwide, it's made $678 million.
True, but the problem is it's still a continuing list of diminishing returns, and the budget on these films are getting so expansive. Now,
Oh
obviously,
no, I understand
the
that.
350 they spent on this that's
Right.
a
No,
one
I
time
just mean
thing.
like
But
they're still hanging on to the fact that internationally these movies sell because they're just big
true.
spectacle movies, and like they still work when it's still made their
But
somewhat their money overseas. But yeah, I think people over here have kind of lost interest, and it's just like yeah, like it's more of a
yeah,
chore to
and
sit
it
through
just
these
I was
movies.
just gonna say without going
Yeah.
into it too much because I would do want to move on. Like it just makes me curious, sort of how long they think they can really continue to drag this out, because we know that there's a Fast X Part 2. This week they announced that the official title of the upcoming Hobbs film is Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs versus Reyes, and that it is going to be led by Dwayne Johnson versus Jason Momoa. And it's like, and that's not even counting, is that like when they said that now it's a trilogy that's ending the series, is this a part of this pseudo Dante Reyes trilogy, or is it a trilogy and Dante Reyes spin-off film with Hobbs? Like, seeing how poorly this movie is done domestically, and even then I would still say internationally, there is some sense of a diminishing return. It is not making as much as it used to. It's just still doing better. It makes me wonder how much longer they can go for. But with that said, we'll go ahead and jump into the next part of the show, and I do want to bring in our guests that have been hanging out backstage. Returning to the show, first up, there is no other Matt to confuse him for, but he likes to be called Soda, so we'll still call him that. Matt Majot is with us. Matt, welcome.
Hey, how's it going?
And we are joined as well by Mr. Kevin Moreno, who is here for the first time on a real proper show. The last time he was here, it was one of those sort of low on topics, low on panelist show. Tonight, he's got the full experience. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, I'm excited that this time I'm here and not while there's a wrestling event going on where I had to pay attention to both.
That's true. We are not competing with anything at the moment, especially including the Flash, but we'll get there. And we do have a couple of more guests coming on specifically to talk about the Flash later. We'll have a bigger panel to discuss that. But before that, we do have a couple of topics we'll jump into. And the first is centered around the Academy Awards and some decisions that they've made. Let's talk about that first. This week, it was announced that the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences had changed the qualifications to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. These new qualifications will take effect starting this year, leading into the 2024 Academy Awards. The new qualifications are as follows. Films must have an expanded theatrical run of 7 days, consecutive or non-consecutive, in 10 of the top 1050 U.S. markets, no later than 45 days after the initial release in theaters. What this means, breaking down the technicality of it, is that films must play in 10 of the top 50 U.S. markets for at least 7 whole days, whether that be consecutively or non-consecutively, to give critics and people alike around the U.S. a chance to properly see the film. This is in contrast to the previous rules, which stated the film only had to run for 7 days in either New York or L.A., where the large bulk of critics are located. For late in the year films with expansions after January 10th, 2025, distributors must submit release plans to the Academy for verification. I apologize, that was meant to be 2024. Release plans for late in the year films must include a planned expanded theatrical run, as described above, to completed no later than January 24th, 2024. Non-US territory releases can count towards 2 of the 10 markets. So, for example, if you release the film for at least 7 days consecutive or non-consecutive in, let's say, the UK and China, then you only have to release it in 8 US markets. Qualifying non-US markets must include the top 15 international theatrical markets plus the home territory for the film. So you can't just release the film internationally and then sell it to Netflix in the US. It must go to theaters here, but going to theaters internationally can help it qualify. The Academy stated in its announcement that this was done in support of the theatrical model, even released a joint statement with NATO, not the other NATO, the National Theater Owners Association. But the belief amongst reporters is that this is being done to, quote, stick it to streaming services. Following Coda winning Best Picture a couple of years ago after receiving next to no theatrical release, although it's worth noting that was thanks to the pandemic, and certain streaming services like Netflix refusing to support the theatrical model in the way the Academy wants. Okay, so I'll break this down in a way that makes a little more sense because I've had a bit more time to sort of understand the rules since I recorded that. So essentially, the old rules to qualify for Best Picture, and it's worth noting, they do use the rule for Best Picture. Submitting for Best Picture is what 99% of the films will do. Very few films will submit specifically for other awards and not for Best Picture. So even though they say that this is only for Best Picture, it is theoretically the qualifier going forward for pretty much all awards. Because if you're submitting for an award, you might as well go for Best Picture too. So it is basically the old rules stated that the films had to release in New York and LA, which is where the bulk of critics live. It's where the bulk of people a part of the Academy live. So they had to have a chance within a 7-day window to see the film. Now, anyone attempting to qualify for the Academy Awards must release the film in 7 days in 10 of the top 50 U.S. markets or 8 of the top 50 U.S. markets and 2 top 15 international markets. So that includes the likes of basically any other major hub city, right? So we're talking the likes of a Chicago, we're talking the likes of in Florida, Orlando, and Miami, I believe, are included on that. If we go a little more into like Midwest areas, we're talking the likes of like Little Rock in Arkansas, like just thinking of like
Dallas, Atlanta, stuff like that. Yeah.
So basically you have to release it further. And that's really the biggest part of it. The other stuff is all technicality. Like if you're releasing wide in January, but you're doing a limited, you have to submit your plan ahead of time. That's technically new, but most films did it anyways, just to assure that they could prove to the Academy they were planning on releasing it anyways. But that is the biggest effective change, is they have to release it wider now. And again, as said, the statement was released in conjunction with NATO, and according to the Academy, it's all about supporting the theaters and encouraging the theatrical model and allowing people to see these Oscar films in theaters the way they were intended to, which in certain cases I think is absolutely fair. Last year, for example, Netflix produced the Best Picture nominee, All Quiet on the Western Front. I didn't see it on Netflix because I had the opportunity to go to a screening that took place like 2 days before the Oscars. So I held out to see it in theaters. And I think that was absolutely a decision that was worth it. That said, I understand that not everywhere was going to under the rules last year. So if you had to watch it on Netflix, you had to. They're trying to fight that. They're trying to make sure that people can see it in theaters, but more so, and then this is where my opinion stands as well, I think they're trying to stick it to streaming services. I think they were forced to sort of play ball and allow streaming services to get in without fully meeting the qualifications because they do produce good content, and the pandemic did make it difficult for people to go to theaters. I don't think anyone, even if you want theaters to succeed, I think you can acknowledge that. But now we're not just seeing the rebirth, so to speak, of theaters and people being more comfortable going out again, but we're also seeing that streaming services are flailing left, right, and center. It's not working out for them the way that they thought it would. And so now the Academy's done playing ball, and now they're saying, you want to be on our turf, play by our rules. And so much so that when it was a Q&A connected to it, somebody was asked about, well, what about like films that go to Netflix, for example, like to use an example, like Spike Lee's movies, right? Spike Lee's movies that go to Netflix are real films. They are using real working crews. They're using SAG and DGA and all that type of stuff. They are, meant to be viewed as films. But let's say they don't get the theatrical release. Well, the Academy stance is, well, then their television content submitted to the Emmys. They're not playing ball anymore with these streaming services. If it's not in a theater and it doesn't meet the qualification, you're not getting in. Austin, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts on these new rules?
So it goes to a thing that I've been advocating for a while, that some of these higher profile streaming service movies, I would like to see a lot of them in theaters anyways before they drop on a streaming service. I would have loved to have seen All Quiet on the Western Front in a theater, and actually there was an art house theater that showed it after the Oscar ceremony for like a week or so, but it was only after it had been, picked up some awards at the actual Oscars, because it picked up some technical stuff, things like that, and the international best picture, excuse me. But yeah, it's one of these things where I look at something like, do you guys remember when Glass Onion came out for like a week or two in theaters? And it actually did quite well. And when you looked at the actual box office numbers, a lot of people saw it. And what they did was they put it out, and then they said, okay, about a month and a half from now, it'll drop on Netflix. But if you want to see it early, we're going to put it out now. I don't see anything wrong with putting out some of these movies in theaters to get a jump on the interest and then dropping them later, especially some of these higher profile movies that either could be pick up awards nominations or just stuff that people are interested in general, instead of just dumping it. Why not try to chug out some of the extra money in theaters? As far as the actual regulations, I think it's fine, because if you look at every year with these Best Picture nominees, there are at least 3 or 4 when they nominate 9 of these that it seems like nobody's seen except for people who go to film festivals.
Yeah.
Stuff like Tar, stuff like Triangle of Sadness, or whatever. I mean, even All Quiet on the Western Front to a degree. If you have to watch it on Netflix, like, what kind of critic, if they're going to vote for it on Best Picture, is going to vote for it realistically, watching it on Netflix on a laptop or something like that. It's just a thing where I would like to see some of these. I was encouraged by the news, and I know this is somewhat related, kind of not, but the Apple, the kind of thing that Apple did, where they're gonna the deal they did with theaters, where they're gonna release some of the more high profile Apple movies later this year in theaters, stuff like Killers of the Flower Moon from Martin Scorsese, which I will see in the theater because that's awesome.
Napoleon,
the Ridley Scott movie with Joaquin Phoenix, will be in theaters. Even if it's just, again, for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it doesn't have to be in theaters forever before you put it on the streaming service, but give people a chance who want to see these movies a chance to see them in theaters. And I think they might be surprised by some of the box office. Are they going to light it up like some big blockbuster movie? Probably not. But, you're only going to add what could be 20, 30, 40 million dollars to your total that you wouldn't have made anyways, just dumping it on a streaming service. But I don't think it's that odd or unfair to say that it needs to at least run in, more than one theater in New York or LA, where the critics are pretty much book up the entire thing for the week and nobody else sees these things. It gets nominated for Best Picture and people go, what's that? I don't know. Right. Never seen that. Why should I care?
This move also comes after last year, the Andrea Riseborough nomination. And not that was a cause of any of this, but the hubbub around all of it led to some of the publicizing of various different aspects of the Oscars in a way that people had never heard of before. And so part of that, what came with it, was we learned that members of the Academy actually get access basically to like a vault app where files of each nominated movie are uploaded into it. So the whole point of the old rules was that it was released in New York and LA, and that was the qualifier because it allowed the actors and the directors and all that who are being, part of the nominees anyway, to see it easier because that's where the bulk of them live, in New York or LA. Now that they have an app where they can go view anything they want that's available for Academy qualification, and they can just watch it at home if they don't want to go to a theater, it makes sense to put in a rule that forces the expansion of it. Soda, I'm going to go to you next, but first, I don't want to leave him sitting in the back forever. Joining us on the show is Mr. Jake Reese hopping in. We'll go ahead and then go to you first, Soda.
So I just want to preface this that, like, all of the ramifications of all this doesn't affect me because of where I am geographically. Like, I still can't see these movies in theaters. I have a theater with 2 screens here. But with that being said, though, I like the direction they're going into because I've never been a fan of this exclusivity model that they had where it was only New York and LA prior to that, which caused movies, like you said, that we'd never heard of get nominated. Like, enough of that shit. At least this way now, by opening up the DAS to different markets, we might get more of a diverse group of Best Picture nominees, because what people like in LA and New York might not play well in other places like Dallas or Atlanta or Chicago or what have you. So this is actually going to make the race more interesting, in my opinion.
Certainly, I think, well, I don't know if it'll affect the types of films that get nominated, but I think what it does is it forces these films to be exposed further quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And so it means that more eyes will get on it, and maybe the consensus around the films may not hit exactly. Because we've definitely seen that before, right? Where like a film debuts at a festival or a film debuts in like one of these smaller markets, and it gets really, really like critics love it. And then it kind of goes wide, and it doesn't quite get the same amount of love as it does in a small force. I mean, hell, speaking of what we're going to talk about later, right? We saw that with The Flash in a very contained, confined, specified screening. The movie came out with rave reviews, some people calling it the best superhero film in years. And then once it went wider, you saw, that's not quite where the consensus is lying. This is because you had a very angled screening that was happening.
I think it was the same with the Fablemans from Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
He had rave reviews amongst the critics very early, and I'm sorry, I thought that movie was fine at best, with a Michelle Williams performance that I thought was completely hamming it up and really quite annoying, and just not as cracked up as I wanted it to be. But yeah, we see stuff like that when it finally, and it did not light up the box office either. People didn't see that movie a lot.
The best example of that is Mallrats. They previewed Mallrats at Comic-Con. They got glowing reviews, like Animal House style reviews, and then it opens to $6 million over
and then falls flat and immediately disappears.
Yeah. So I mean, it's nothing new. But yeah.
Well, we see movies like that debut at like South by Southwest and get rave reviews, horror movies, whatever. And then when they finally come out, they land with the dud. You know, I mean, it just you can't really take what you hear from these little limited early screenings, to the
necessarily as truth, right?
Yeah, right.
Before I jump down to Kevin, I'll answer because I saw it come up in the thing talking about adding a category. So this isn't official, which is why I wouldn't include it in a news. But I have heard from people that sort of, as Matt and I have said on before, we both have people we speak to that sort of learn things. That's why I talk to people before I put news stories on the show. I have heard that they are considering adding a category to the Oscars, but it is not a voice performance category. It is apparently they are looking at stunts. So much so, Chad Stahelski, I believe, even mentioned it very briefly publicly.
About time. It's about time stunt work gets acknowledged. Which, although maybe a year too late, because John Wick will win all the awards. But well, either that it could have some competition with Mission Impossible, obviously with what Tom Cruise was doing. But hey, it would be a great race in that opinion and encourage more people to do practical stunt work. I think.
Yeah, name it the Yakima Canutt Award, you cowards. For those of you who don't know who that is, look
right. Yeah, the stagecoach guy. Yeah,
the first true great stunt person.
Right. Yeah. Go listen.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
I find it quite interesting. Though I'm a bit skeptical because it may be worrisome for the smaller studios. I mean, the smaller indie studio where I think they had more advantage with just New York and LA, because probably it wouldn't cost as much. But now when you're kind of targeting more, that's when we're like, they're going to probably be in a disadvantage.
That's actually a great point. I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really good point. Yeah. So like, actually, I'll go back to Leslie, the Andrea Riseborough film from last year, right? That movie was put together and distributed by an incredibly small studio. So you're right, paying to put it in theaters in New York and LA versus running it in 10 different markets. Yeah, there is a price difference. Absolutely. Even if you're putting it in one theater in those markets and you're just making sure it has enough showtimes that it can be viewed broadly, that's 10 theaters versus 2. So there is a cost difference. Actually, I'm curious to see how that develops. That's a really great point. I'm curious to see how that develops, because I wonder if smaller studios would speak out potentially, or maybe they can get help funding from somewhere else. You never know. So Jake, you hopped in late. The gist of what we're talking about is the Academy put out its new set of rules for qualification for Best Picture. At the center of it is, instead of the old rules where you must release a film that has the ability to be screened by the public in LA and New York for qualification. Now it has to be in 10 of the top 50 US markets, which is basically 10 of 50 major cities in the US, or you can release it in 2 international markets and 8 cities in the US. Either or can qualify. So the belief is that it's to force streaming services to put their films in theaters rather than just a limited release to that New York, LA thing and then qualify off of that.
The rule, as I understood it, was it had to be New York or LA, and I thought they were just expanding. The city's given more shots, so I clearly misunderstood the rule from the get-go. But yeah, like with
at one point it was New York or LA, and then a couple years ago they adjusted it to be both, and now they've adjusted further to expand it again.
Well, that's no bueno. I mean, for if Kevin is correct in his assessment of the situation with the indie studios having issues like that, yeah. So
yeah, you're right. There's. If this is a rule that's being done to stick it to streaming services because they're such a big part of the model, because they're against some of them, not all, like Amazon, for example, fucking bought MGM, right? Like they're not against theatrical releases at all. Apple is certainly diving into that pool more. They experimented last year a little bit. Some of those films got releases. I, for example, saw both Emancipation and Spirited in theaters. Only one of them was worth seeing in theaters, but I did see both of them in theaters. And so they're diving in more. But yeah, like Netflix specifically, man, Netflix, between the writer's strike and Netflix being one of the big holdouts, and now this, Netflix are causing a lot of problems for a studio that's losing a lot of money.
Here's the thing. I saw Glass Onion in theater for that 1 week because it landed on Black Friday, and I'm like, oh, it's should have go see the movie, and I picked that one. But I'm like, hey, I could see it a month early. It lasts for a week. I could easily talk about it and just wait 12 months to watch it again on Netflix. And I'm like, and it was worth it. And when they make so much money, they still decide, hey, we're gonna keep it a week, and let's wait a month for it to be on Netflix. I'm like, that's money on the table. There is so much.
Netflix's argument supposedly is with Glass Onion, if I remember correctly, was like whatever BS statement Sanderos made was like the money we earned was a lot more than we expected, but versus what we paid to distribute it, yada yada yada, which is like, okay, so that means you're a film studio. Congratulations, you spent money to distribute a film in the hopes of making money. Like, good job, buddy. But yeah, so with that, we'll go ahead and move on. We're not quite at Flash yet, but we're going to get a little more geeky with our topics as we're going to talk about Spider-Man. When talking about the Sony Spider-Man universe, let's start with Kraven the Hunter. The first trailer debuted this week to mostly positive reception as it showcased Aaron Taylor Johnson's turn as the titular Hunter. The film features a litany of villains in various supporting roles, including Oscar winner Ariana DeBose as Calypso, Fred Heckinger as Chameleon, Alessandro Nivola as Rhino, Christopher Abbott as the Foreigner, and Russell Crowe as Kraven's father. J.C. Shandor directs the film, which releases on October 6, 2023. Moving on, 2 of the dumber projects in the Sony Spider-Man universe have been canceled. Bad Bunny's El Muerto project has been canceled after a failure to move past the pre-production stages. The movie was in the process of casting, with wrestler Sasha Banks and actor Marvin Jones III of Black Lightning fame already cast, with Jones reprising his role of Tombstone, which he voiced in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Alongside El Muerto's cancellation, Donald Glover's Hypno Hustler film has been killed following, a very negative and confused public reception. Instead, the development deal that Glover signed with Sony Pictures will be put towards developing a project featuring him as the Prowler, following his appearance in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. All right, so with that said, we'll start with the Kraven trailer, and I'll keep my thoughts brief before I pass it off to you guys. The trailer looks fine, but I think all 3 of these movies so far have been horrible, so I have no faith until I see this movie and it's good. That said, the fact that Russell Crowe is doing a Russian accent, but Aaron Taylor Johnson isn't, definitely stood out to me, especially because the character has a Russian fucking name. And The Rhino looks cool at the very least. If we're gonna go back to that, it looks cool. The visual effects of it so far looks cool. But yeah, that's kind of it. I don't know. I'm checked out of these Sony films, man. Like the best of them are just disappointing. So I don't care. I like JC Shandor. I hope he made a good movie, but I don't trust Sony. I'll do reverse order. Jake, I'll go to you. What are your thoughts on the Kraven trailer?
Yeah, I'm with you on the accent thing being a big question mark for me. And the Sony Spider-Man villains being good guys thing has not played. So,
Kevin?
I'm gonna probably be the odd man out. I can collect this trailer. I really hated Morbius. I saw both Venoms were just stupid bad, but they were so entertaining to watch. I had so much fun. This one looks really interesting. I didn't mind the accents because I'm like, I just like stopped caring about accents. I'm like with one of these characters. I'm like, they're gonna just forget it. Like, is that gonna be a common actor with their accents? I don't care anymore now with the accent. If you put it off, fine. That no, but boy, this one is being rated R. This is where I'm like, there's some interest in this one, and with the explanation of the Rhino, I'm like, okay, that's where I'm like, okay, you're gonna pull off the Rhino with that live action. Like it's Spider-Man 2 and the robot and the cartoon and the 90s cartoon with the weird suit. I'm thinking, it could work. It could work.
Yeah, the Rhino at the end was probably the most interesting part of that, and I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe the version they showed at CinemaCon showed just a little bit more footage than this one did. Like I believe there was an extra couple of seconds of him mutating where they chose to cut to black on this one, probably to hide it. But I am curious. Soda, up to you.
So I'm looking forward to more Kraven. This is actually the first of these Sony movies where the trailers actually got me interested. Venom, I came to after they were all theatrically released. I love the hell out of those movies. But it's more like an ironic love. Like, I know they're bad, but they're still good. And I still haven't seen Morbius, but this one piqued my interest. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing them. Bummer about all the other projects, especially the one by Bad Bunny. Seems like everything that guy touches turns to gold until now. And nice to hear that Donald Glover might actually be doing a great Prowler movie. Definitely looking forward to that if that does happen. But on the same time, though, I don't really put much hype into big studio things until I see a trailer, just because of all the shit that's been announced over the years that we've never seen.
True. Austin?
Yeah, Kraven, it could be interesting, it could be good, but it'll probably flop at the box office. Let's be realistic. Like, I think this movie will make $40 million opening weekend and then tank after that. Like, I just don't see a lot of interest in this.
Unless it's good.
Unless it's like really, really good, but yeah,
And I think that's the key.
Know.
I think at this point, especially after Morbius, like, Sony lost to Morbius so badly because not only was it bad and not only did it fail, but the internet memed it, and Sony took the bait by expanding its release again and losing even more money on it.
Yeah,
talk about that.
Like, this movie doesn't just have to be good. It doesn't have to be watchable. It doesn't have to be enjoyable. It has to be fucking excellent, I think, to turn a profit.
It has to be like Spider-Verse level good, yeah.
Yeah, because the thing is, like, the Venom films made money, but I think that's because just people overall know the character of Venom and they like Venom. The average person doesn't know Kraven the Hunter. They don't know this character. And so I think they're going to think of Morbius when they think of this, unfortunately. And that means it's going to have to be good to try and beat Morbius out at the box office.
I'll say this, though. The one thing helping these Sony movies is that they don't cost as much as these bloated MCU movies.
True.
The two Venom movies each cost $100 million and made a lot of money. They know how to budget their material and do their thing. I like the Venom movies as well. I think it's high budget schlock, and I kind of love them. I kind of fucking love them. They're really entertaining. Like, I loved Venom Let There Be Carnage. I thought it was a blast. And it was 90 minutes, dude. I was in and out of the theater. super entertaining. Like it didn't feel bloated and messy. I don't know. I like those movies. Morbius is stupid, drunk fun. I can have fun with that movie. It's stupid. But like, so is it wrong that like at this point I kind of welcome stuff that Sony puts out that's kind of wacky and bonkers, like as opposed to the Shazam 2 and like Eternals and fucking the Marvels. Like, I don't give a shit about those movies. But you tell me you're making a R-rated Kraven movie, I'll be there opening night. Like, he's biting noses off of the trailers. Like, I'll watch it. Like, at least give me something different. Like than the shit I've seen in theaters over the last couple of years, like that just bores me. Like, in this 2 hours and 40 minutes of nonsense. Like, especially this movie's like a tight 100 minutes or something like that. So I don't know, it's just my take. Like, I'll watch it, and let's see how silly it gets. At least it's not the Aunt May movie that they keep talking about.
I forgot about that.
You remember that?
Oh,
you remember when Aunt May was going to be a movie? You remember that?
I remember that. Yeah.
Remember when she was going to be like a secret agent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, his parents were in that universe, so why wouldn't May?
Yeah, no, and I didn't even know if this movie was going to come out until I actually saw the theater. I saw it on the release schedule for whatever it was, October or something. But I was like, is that movie still going to come out? We haven't heard like anything about that movie. And then they out of nowhere released like a Red Band trailer, and I'm like, okay, I guess it's coming.
It got shot.
It's coming. It got shot.
Man, they have been making these movies so quietly. Like, Madam Web is also in the can. It's set for a February release. Like, that is sure. Yeah. And then in terms of the other two projects, I don't have much to say because I think they made the right call. Like, I don't care. Like, Bad Bunny was fine in Bullet Train, but he wasn't a character. Like, physicality wise, he has it down. And I'm not a wrestling guy, but I have heard that people have liked him so far in the WWE.
He's really good.
He's been a success in the WWE.
Has he? Okay.
Well, and they don't. He's not like a regular guy. They just trot him out occasionally. They had a pay-per-view in Puerto Rico, and he was like the semi-main event. And he was
is he kind of like Paul in that way? The Paul
kind of
brother?
like Logan Paul. Yeah, he works occasionally in the right circumstances, in the right sort of storylines. But he's got a knack for it. He's good, and he takes bumps. He puts his body on. Like, he's all in on it. So I would have been interested to see what he could have done with the full on movie where he's doing action and stuff. It could have been interesting.
Yeah, I liked him quite a bit in Bullet Train.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing was, like, Bullet Train, it was a cool action sequence. It really was. And he did a good job. But he wasn't a character. And so even after seeing that film and liking what he did, I question, like, especially because it was like the whole thing is like El Muerto is like a luchador villain. Like, I totally bought him being able to pull off the physicality in that film. I just still couldn't buy him as an actor. I have no idea how well he was going to do. Because I think as we've all seen, right, even if he is really selling it in the WWE, that acting versus on-screen acting is two different skill sets. You do need two different types of skill sets to succeed. I mean, we've all seen, Batista's taken a lot of work to get as good as he has, and Dwayne Johnson still hasn't fully translated because he hasn't put in as much work. So, we've seen the successes of it and the ebbs and flows.
Well, real quick, I did look up Kraven's budget, 130 million. Again, they're keeping the budget.
It's not bad. It's not a bad budget.
Relatively, constrained, which is, I think, what's going to help them, because Venom Let There Be Carnage made a little less money than the first one did, but again, it still only had like $100 million budget, so it was still profitable. It was all, even after marketing and everything. So, I think that helps them, that if it does become kind of a sleeper hit, on word of mouth or whatever, or just, again, like I talked about earlier in the first segment with these low budget horror movies, they don't have to make that much to be profitable. And I think that's the one thing Sony has at least under control over stuff like Disney and Marvel right now, is they're at least keeping their budgets in check. It kind of goes back to Deadpool having a budget of $50 million and then making a shit ton of money, and partially because they kept it in check, even Deadpool too.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so like the Bad Bunny of it aside, El Muerto was a fucking horrible idea. You couldn't make Morbius work. Why the fuck did you think even if it's good, why did you think El Muerto was going to sell? And same thing, Hypno Hustler, I don't even know what the fuck that is. I at least had heard of El Muerto, but
So
what
the
the fuck is
only
Hypno Hustle?
the only reason I would say El Muerto would have sold is because of Bad Bunny. The dude is the biggest artist in the world. That would be the only reason that movie would do any good.
Yeah, so I just yeah, maybe, but like I just have a hard time seeing those movies sell. They don't sound like good premises. The whole villain being a hero thing is already kind of wavering. And so I think they made the right choice. Like, yeah, they signed Glover to a development deal. Go ahead. You want to do something with the Prowler? Have fun. Go ahead. That's not a horrible idea.
Oh.
God help him if he ends up in the same film that Michael Keaton's going to get dragged into eventually. But, you know, it is, you know, yeah.
Two that would work as your villain and heroes are Venom and Morbius. One of them is a hit. It's still a hit.
It is a hit, yes.
It was Morbius.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think they made the right call. I don't even think they should make a Prowler film. Like, I think if they want to use Donald Glover in a supporting role somewhere else as the Prowler, they should do that. But I still think a Prowler
Well,
film
I
would be
still
a
think
bad
it's the
idea.
best idea to keep villains as villains in hero movies.
True.
Like this trend of trying to do these,
Anti-hero.
villain. Other than the Punisher, you can get away with it because he's more of an anti-hero than like a villain. But that's his character, is he's an anti-hero. But like the only exception of the super successful one being Joker, but Joker is Joker, and it was a different, more realistic take of just a mentally ill person.
Yeah, he wasn't.
Joker. He
He
wasn't.
was the Joker, but he wasn't the
Spraying
Joker.
people with acid flowers and dealing out explosive whoopee cushion. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like very comic booky. So I mean, but like trying to make these guys and then you try to make them sympathetic. It's like again, it can work if it was something like Venom. At least it works for me, just because Venom has bounced between the two, like in the comic books, to where he can be like that anti-hero, so it can work. But I think that this trend of like trying to make these low level B or C tier villains into like the headlining person, like what are we doing here? Like Black Adam was like a C level character. Like what are we doing? Like he should have been the villain of a Shazam movie. Like what are we doing? Yeah, like
okay, the only way it could work, and that if you change the tone to a comedy, and you get the D-list Spider-Man villains, and you adapt the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, because that is one really great comic about a couple of the villains and just having an adventure, and it's a really funny comic.
I was gonna say, just off concept alone, that sounds like what they not Sony did it, but that sounds like what they kind of did with MODOK on Hulu. Yeah. Like this comedic thing of like, look at this villain try and fight the hero. But so we're gonna go ahead and jump into the third topic here. But before we do, I'm gonna bring in our last panelist joining us as Richie Thompson as well. Welcome to the show, sir. All right, so and we're going to go into the third topic, which is staying on Spider-Man, which is this is more of a discussion that's taking place on the internet. There's not really a news story around the idea that based off the fact that the film is a box office success, it's a critical success, it's an audience success, and it's even a Hollywood success. A lot of people are kind of coming forth and showing support towards Across the Spider-Verse. And there's been this discourse that's taken place among certain areas of the internet that people are starting to believe this could be the animated film, the first one in a long time, that has an actual legitimate shot at breaking the Best Picture barrier, right? Because the thing is, the last time that this happened was with Pixar back in the early 2010s, late 2000s, right? We had Up, we had Toy Story 3. Since then, we've had films that are good enough to do it. Last year, people argued Pinocchio, Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, was good enough to break that barrier. But the problem is it just didn't have a lot of vocal support. It was released very late into the campaign. It wasn't seen very much. It was on Netflix, as we discussed earlier. It did go to theaters, but not a big release anyways, enough to qualify, and that's it. And so, it was like it never kind of gained the momentum it needed to outside of winning Best Animated Feature, which it did deserve to do, to be fair. And so because this movie has everything going for it, And we'll do this as sort of more of a buy or sell idea. We'll sort of round table it real quick, and then we'll move on to the Flash, because I don't know if there's a whole lot of interwoven discussion like there was on the last one. So I'll start with you first, Richie. Based off the fact that only 3 films in Oscar history have received a Best Picture nomination, and all of them are Disney films, given everything this movie has behind it, do you think it has even an outside chance at breaking the Best Picture barrier?
Like just being nominated or actually winning the actual thing?
Let's go with being nominated, because I think we probably need to see more films from the year to discuss if it has a chance at winning. You know what I mean? There's still 6 months of the year left.
Yeah.
In terms of now knowing after beginning this rule last year that there are just 10 Best Picture nominees, there's no more of this rank choice voting. You have to meet a certain barrier to make it in. So it could be 5, it could be 8, it could be 10, it could be 7. 10 films straight up nominated. Do you think it has a chance at making it?
Yeah, I mean, if they go with 10 or whatever, like I think it has a chance, but I'm still not confident where like there is like change within the Academy of like like of what constitutes like an Best Picture Oscar film. I still don't think we're sort of there yet where how they sort of view sort of comic book movies and how they view certain movies, or how they view movies that aren't just straight your typical straight drama or whatever. But obviously we're getting there with everything at once was unconventional, and things like that. But I think that you still got like there's still got a way to go. You still got things that like are nominated for best comedy that aren't comedies. You still got things that like you still got there are those critically beloved movies that don't get a look in, like sort of like like from a few years ago, like Logan. I feel like that could have been. So I don't know. I feel, and I honestly, if it was me, I think that deserves the best picture over this. Even though I do like it. I definitely think it's a shoe-in for best animated. I think it'll win best animated, and I think it'll win best animated hands down.
As somebody who has seen probably its closest competitor, which is obviously the upcoming DreamWorks film Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken. Yeah, Spider-Verse is going to wipe the floor with Best Animated Feature.
Yeah. So it's definitely going to do that, but I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. I just don't think it has like I don't know. I don't think it has that sort of that. I guess I'm going to sell it because I don't think it has that. Like I don't know. Toy Story 3 was like just that exceptional film. Like we'll see what happens. It might, if it holds up in like 10 years. It probably will. But like I don't know. I think Toy Story 3 and like Beauty and the Beast were kind of these like classic films, and I don't know. In my opinion, I just don't know whether like Spider like that.
If it's at that level.
At that level, and like I mean I really liked the film, but I definitely was like and I don't want to grudge people's enjoyment of the film, but I was like sometimes I look at people's enjoyment like, man, I wouldn't go that far, but well, you like what you like, I guess. But I thought it was good, but at this stage I don't even know. I guess it's hard to tell because we're not at the end of the year, but I don't know if it'll crack my top 10, but we'll have to see. But it's good. But I think if it was to get nominated, I think it would be just there to fill up numbers as opposed to actually having a shot at actually winning.
Right.
I think something like that came out early in the year, like Air, probably deserves a bit more in my opinion. But so I'll go sell. But I wouldn't be too mad if it got nominated, but I don't think it's winning.
Austin,
look. Zero fucking chance this movie gets nominated for Best Picture. I'm sorry. All you geeks can get your hopes up, but it's not going to happen. Just don't be surprised when it doesn't. Look, like Richie said, this thing's probably a shoo-in for animated feature, and that's what it's going to win. You're just going to have to be happy with that because you still have to remember who actually votes for these movies. It's a bunch of post over 50 people that don't get as into this movies as younger comic book fans, families, things like that. They're still going to nominate the same crop of independent films, dramatic films, whatever. Yes. But also the Black Panther got nominated for Best Picture. Yeah, that was after a couple of years of Oscars So White campaign. They nominated Black Panther. I'm sorry. The truth hurts, guys, but that's why it got fucking nominated. Okay, if Logan didn't get nominated, Dark Knight didn't get nominated. Get the fuck out of here with that. Okay, like I speak harshly, but that's the truth. Okay, it's like the animated thing that we talked about, like that only a couple ever in history, stuff like Toy Story 3 and Beauty and the Beast, but which still hold up to this day as classics in that genre. And you have the couple ones that barely skirt that line. The fact that comic book films don't get nominated hardly ever, other than those really super rare occasions like that. And yeah, you just have to remember who's voting for these movies, guys. Like, I'm sorry, like who the actual people who cast the ballots. It's just not happening. And there's a dirty little secret in Hollywood that even the stuff that gets nominated for animated feature, the dirty little secret in Hollywood is that even most of those movies, the people voting for them don't watch them.
That's true. Yeah,
That's
that's literally, you can read articles about how they don't watch them, which is why stuff doesn't get nominated.
Doesn't get considered, right.
Like the Lego movie, but there's other movies like The Boss Baby that do get nominated. You know what I mean?
Well, the Lego movie is a particular. There's a reason that didn't qualify, but because it wasn't nominated because it wasn't looked at, it didn't qualify.
It's a hybrid. Is it more because it's hybrid?
Yeah, because it's the. I'll say it quickly and then I'll go over to Soda. Because you brought it up, the Lego movie wasn't nominated, and none of them were nominated because they were animated by I believe the company's called Digital Animal, which is technically a visual effects company, not an animation company. So the film is it is an animated film the same way like the live action Lion King's an animated film, but according to the Academy, it's VFX, not animation.
That is a stupid reason.
It is. It is. And for what it's worth, it was based on a technicality that was insinuated after the same studio actually won Best Picture 10 years prior for Happy Feet, or Best Animated Feature, obviously, for Happy Feet, because that movie is an animated film, but it also includes segments of mocap where they used actor references to like animate the penguins dancing, and it was VFX, but it was also animation, and it won the award. So they instituted all these technicalities that would later rule out things like the Lego movie because it's not animation by the definition that they use.
My point about stuff like The Boss Baby getting nominated still stands. These people don't watch these movies like most.
No, it's a DreamWorks film.
They take whatever, they pick the ones that get for your consideration or whatever. They don't actually watch them. Most of the time. That's why you had a long string of things where most of the time just the Pixar movie won, even if there was a clear better movie, just because they don't watch them. Like, that's a dirty little secret, but it's true. Same with documentary features, by the way, which I could rant about in a whole nother show. But yeah.
What are your thoughts,
Matt?
So I'm more in the boat of Austin here. I would like to see it nominated, but I don't think we're there yet. However, if anyone could do it, it is Spider-Verse. Like, it is going to be remembered in the same breath as Beauty and the Beast and Up and Toy Story 3. I guarantee you that. But I don't think this is the year. I would like to, but I don't think so.
I'm going to say yes, but with the but. Unless, by miracle chance, the big Oscar bait movies fall flat on their feet and don't pretty much don't do well at all with the Academy. It has a chance. It could be like something like a repeat of the 2010 Oscars.
True, that's fair. Jake?
Yeah, it's slim chance, but it could happen. That's the only thing that can happen. Do I think in reality, it's not a repeat of that? No, probably not. It's gonna probably they overlook it, especially within the Spider-Man, and I'm probably gonna doubt it's gonna win Best Animated too, if Disney's Wish does well.
True. Yeah, because Disney have that thing. If their movies are good, they usually get the nod over it.
Yeah.
Jake, what are your thoughts?
Into the Spider-Verse still beat Incredibles 2, which was a relatively popular Disney movie in general. So I'm not worried about the best animated picture whatsoever. And I was kind of on the fence and not caring about this, but with all of Austin's anti-rhetoric, I feel obligated to defend what is going to be my favorite movie of the year. So I'm gonna buy this.
I haven't seen the movie. I can't watch
I know
it.
you haven't seen it. You can't. You'll die.
I'm just saying it's got a lot of shit against it. You have to remember,
all right.
Be realistic. It's realistic here. Come on.
Love you. But yeah, so I do think this one has a chance of getting in there, just squeaking in the top 10. I haven't seen a ton this year, but I also haven't heard a lot of hype. I kind of get into the Oscars more towards the end of the year.
That's right.
So we'll see what shakes out, but I do think this movie is good enough. And you know what the Academy loves? Multiversal movies involving bagels.
And so that's what I was going to get to. So my take on this is, realistically, if I think one of these movies is going to get nominated, I actually think it's going to be if they nail Beyond. I don't think it's going to win a bunch of awards, but I think it'll be a similar effect to
Lord of the Rings.
The Lord of the Rings films were appreciated by the Academy Award, but Return of the King nailed the home run at the end. It sent it home, and so that's the one that really got the love. I think if any of these films is going to, it's going to be Beyond. That's the one where if they nail it, I think that could pick up a Best Picture nomination. And I agree with a lot of what Austin's saying, but I think we are starting to actively see the change, because the winner of 7 Academy Awards last year, including Best Screenplay, Best Director, 3 of the acting awards, and Best Picture, was a multiversal action film in which Short Round fought off security guards with a fanny pack. There was a fight sequence including was it a single-sided dildo or a double-sided?
Two dildos. She had 2 dildos.
Two dildos.
Dual dildos.
A action sequence in which two people chase around a statue to shove it up their asshole. That movie won Best
I love that
Picture.
movie.
Now, again, I still think Austin's right for the most part. I think we are still, for the most part, in that elder mindset. But I think that the changes that the Academy have very vocally made over the last few years to induct younger members, to shift up their demographic, to move out sort of the executive side of things and shift in younger people, I think in general we are starting to see that mindset take effect. And that's what I think gives, again, I'd say Beyond has a better chance than Across if they nail it. I also think Kevin's right in that if the Oscar bait films don't quite hit this year, maybe it has a better chance then. But I think we're starting to reach the point where films like this could get in, because it's not just the fact that Everything Everywhere All at Once won an Oscar last year. We also saw weirder and Top Gun Maverick got a Best Picture nominee.
Yeah.
Right? Now that's an incredibly well executed blockbuster, but at the end of the day, it's a blockbuster. Just 5 years before, that movie doesn't get a Best Picture nominee, but it did last year.
Yeah,
And
but Raiders of the Lost Ark got nominated. That's not unprecedented.
Yeah, but things were different back then, though. They were constantly nominating movies like that. Like Star Wars got nominated, and that movie got nominated. E.T.
Well, I'm just saying that's not that unusual in that aspect.
We're coming back to that. We're definitely coming back. It's
Right.
basically it's to quote the song from the Hairspray soundtrack. We've come so far, but we've got so far to go.
So yeah, I think we're starting to reach the point where we could see that turn, but I think it's a mix of kind of what Jake said and what Austin said. I still think that mindset exists. However, I do think, again, with that movie winning all those awards last year, we're starting to see the breakthrough of, no, people are more open-minded and they're more perceptive to certain things. And so while I don't think this movie's going to do it, I think it's the next one that'll do it, as long as they nail the ending. I think we're getting there, slowly but surely. And I think also what helps it is the fact that major Hollywood people, we talked about last week on the show, Guillermo del Toro, publicly stating that once he finishes up everything that he has left in production in live action, which is 1 or 2 projects at most, I believe, he plans to completely shift the rest of his career towards the art form of animation and trying to basically leave his legacy as helping develop that platform to the point where it can be considered as a normal film the way that other people consider regular live action cinema. I think we're at the cusp of that breaking point. It's just a matter of what is finally the film that does it.
Well, damn it, Del Toro, if you're watching, and I know you are, could you please make In the Mountains of Madness before you go full animated, please, and make a goddamn Lovecraft movie before you retire from.
Or do it animated.
Yeah, do an
Yeah.
animated version of it. Yeah, please.
Either way, he just do that.
You got the
I'm down
you got
with
the
that.
monster. You got the monster mindset. Come on, make a Cthulhu movie already. Goddamn it! Like, stop playing around. What are we doing?
Yeah, if anyone could do it, it's him. Speaking of movies that bring on Cthulhu, let's talk about Flash, baby. Let's do it. All right, guys. So from this point on, I'm going to issue the official spoiler warning for 2023's The Flash. If you have not seen the film, from this point on, we are going to be talking full spoilers. So tune out, go away, come back once you've seen it, because box office numbers tell us most of you have not seen it. That said, The Flash, starring Ezra Miller, directed by Andy Muschietti, written by Christina Hodson, who of course wrote Bumblebee and Birds of Prey for DC previously, based on a story by John Francis Daley, Jonathan Goldstein, and Joby Harold, the first two of Dungeons & Dragons fame, Joby Harold of Obi-Wan Kenobi fame. Ezra Miller stars, of course, as the Flash, a member of the Justice League who accidentally discovers his ability to time travel when he goes back in time to resurrect his mother and save her from dying. It has catastrophic effects on the timeline, including changing Superman to Supergirl and replacing one Batman who can't care in Ben Affleck to another Batman who cared just a bit more in Michael Keaton. Can he reverse the timeline? Watch the movie and find out, or listen to us tell you here. I'm going to start it off, and then I'm going to run to the bathroom. So if you guys just want to kind of go in a circle, that works for me in terms of giving your general opinion on the film to start. But with that said, I think this movie's fine. Honestly, after all the hubbub and all the the emphasis on, you know, is this going to be great? Is it going to suck? The production issues, the Ezra Miller of it all. You talk about the CinemaCon screening and the huge hubbub that got, and then the critical reception comes out and it's more mixed than that. And at the end of the day, I think this movie's perfectly fine. I think it's entertaining enough to get you through, but I don't think it's anything special. I think the moment you start analyzing the story, it falls apart. I think you get one good character, you get one bad character. Ezra Miller as Modern Barry, I think, does give a good performance, but their performance as 2013 Barry feels a lot like the performance we saw in previous films that left a lot to be desired. That's obviously on purpose. It's on purpose, but it's still.
I'll talk about why I don't mind it when I get to my thoughts and why I think it's still a good performance. I'll talk about that.
But yeah, every aspect of the film, it's like you get one good performance, you get one bad. Like, I think Keaton and Affleck are good. That said, Michael Shannon, before this movie was even out, was publicly talking about how he didn't like shooting this movie, and you can tell his performance is nothing in this. And I know a lot of people did enjoy her, but quite frankly, I wasn't that big a fan of Sasha Calle's Supergirl. I don't think it's her fault. It's not a character. She doesn't have very much to do in this movie outside of, well, die. She dies a lot, but outside of that, there's not a lot going on with this character. And I just don't think that she adds anything to elevate it past the nothing character that it is. The visual effects were shit. This movie was ugly through most of it. Like, in most movies, rubber babies would be like the worst thing you would find. In this, it's one of the better visual effects because there's so many bad effects in this movie. It's not even funny. And this thing, it just reeks of we give up. Like, between the tenuous production of this film, to the fact that it's getting rebooted even before it's released, to the fact that the public doesn't want it because they didn't want Ezra Miller playing the Flash, but the general public also doesn't seem to understand how shooting a movie works because you can't replace Ezra Miller as the Flash. Just this whole thing just screams, we gave up, we don't care, we're putting it in theaters. And that's kind of the feeling that I got. It's fine. If you don't think about it too much, I think you'll have fun with it, but there's not a lot to love in this. So that's it. I'll be back in a moment. Austin, I'll throw it to you first, and then we'll kind of go around the panel if you guys just want to give your opening thoughts before we dive into more specific topics in the film.
So, is it the greatest movie of all time, as the head of Warner Brothers said? No, it's not. it ain't Dark Knight. It ain't, what? It ain't even Man of Steel. It's. I like all three of the sort of Snyder movies. The trilogy. Well beyond this, but I thought the movie was still pretty good overall. I've seen it twice now. I still think it works even on a second viewing. I think it's pretty decent mainstream entertainment. To me, this is one of the things where, as most people know with me, I'm more of a DC guy than a Marvel guy. I'm a huge Snyder fan. Like, I love Man of Steel, BBS, the Snyder Cut of Justice League, that kind of stuff. Like, it's just stuff that's right up my alley, stuff with a little more of an edge, a little bit of a darker tone here and there. That they're not afraid to take a little risk, take some chances. So the fact that this movie felt like more of a swan song to the DC universe, like for people like me, who are kind of sad that the Snyderverse, was never fully realized, and it kind of, the fact that it's bringing it back around to Man of Steel, which is the one that kind of kicked this whole thing off, with the events of that, I think is interesting, and I found that fascinating. It's not the greatest thing ever, but I was really looking for story flaws and things like that the second time around, and I still had a good time with it overall. As a movie, we can get into little things like the special effects, but one thing I want to talk about the special effects is that most fans are ignoring the best special effect in this movie, and it's that, holy shit, you forget there's only one Ezra Miller in this movie.
That's true.
Much like The Social Network, when you forget there's only one Armie Hammer. Like, my God, like, there's stuff where Ezra Miller is carrying Ezra Miller through a wall, and it's like, that's a pretty damn good special effect that people are ignoring. That's in a lot of this movie, that when they can make you forget that there's only one actor and the blending of the two, that's a phenomenal special effect. So I think that's one thing that people are, rubber babies. Okay, do you want real looking babies being put in a microwave? Okay, that's weird. But all right. But, and also, most of the stuff we see in that is distorted by the time field. I can defend that. It's supposed to look wonky and weird, especially when he's in the time treadmill dome, whatever you want to call it, the chronodome, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's supposed to look weird and distorted because it's all in super slow motion. Have you ever seen somebody get hit on Mythbusters in super slow motion?
Yes, it's fucking awesome.
We all look really weird when our jaw gets misaligned. When somebody gets knocked out of the UFC in super slow motion, we all look goofy and weird. Like, it all looks silly and weird. But overall, we'll get into more specifics as we go along. I'm just kind of giving like a general thing. Yes, it's somewhat nostalgia bait, but then again, what was Spider-Man No Way Home? But nostalgia bait for Spider-Man. I mean, like, if you're gonna defend that, then like, why, you shit on Flash, but like Spider-Man No Way Home is perfectly fine. Okay, all right, whatever. We can have that debate later. I think it's essentially the same thing, but those are kind of my overall things. It just makes me pine for the fact that what could have been, as far as the Snyderverse, I think overall we could have had an even more interesting, I think, Flashpoint movie eventually down the line than this one. I think it was kind of cobbled together just to sort of wrap a few things up and give DC fans something to pine on. But Matt, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I had a lot of fun. Do I think it's Avengers Endgame level, Infinity War level? No. But I went in, I had fun, I laughed, I jumped out of my seat with the cameos. When George Clooney showed up, I was like, I felt that gif of Tennant at the beginning of Voyage of the Damned, if you watch Doctor Who, going, what? That's how I felt when he popped up. This movie, like I said, was a lot of fun. Great to see Michael Keaton back. Loved hearing the Batman 89 score. It's one of my favorite film scores. So it was great to hear that. I thought Ezra Miller knocked it out of the park. The scene where Barry is talking to his mom, played by Maribel Verdú, who I found out afterwards, where he's talking to her in the grocery store, just had me melted into a puddle in the theater. Like, it was such a well done scene, which I think if it was in like a really great superhero movie, I think could have been nominated for an award. But not out of this movie. But yeah, no, overall, I really liked it. I'm looking forward to seeing it again. I had a lot of fun with this movie. Like I'm one of those. I'm an easy film fan. I'm a sucker for nostalgia. So this was right up my alley.
Yeah. No, Kevin, what are your kind of overall thoughts, real quick?
I thought it was good. I enjoyed the few parts. The unseen duo for Ezra Miller's Ezra Miller. Had to do the reference. But it is a really great effect. That was probably the best visual effect from the Flash that I really did like. The type I was in earlier, I was fine with. I'm like, okay, I'm like, that makes sense. Around the end, though, that's where I'm like, okay, I'm like, yep. Now I understand why the effects are tarnish. I understood. Like, oh, the reason. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, for the earlier scene, it like went through with the introduction of Belly first trying it out. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. The end, I'm like, yeah, that did not work at all, especially the later visuals. I'm like, nope. I did not mind the baby visuals. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm like, okay, that's fine. I was like, that was okay. I did like Supergirl. I was like, oh, it's introduction seeing Supergirl in the basement in a while. I'm like, okay, okay. I'm like, I like her. Like, not as much of her, but I'm like, I wish there was a bit more of her, but with more interaction with them. I'm like, okay, Michael Keaton Flash. I want to say this. I never saw the Keaton Batman movie before till around 2015, because I grew up with Kilmer and Clooney. So I'm like, so I wasn't that big a reaction, but seeing him in the Batman suit, okay, I thought he was really great. However, a good chunk of the story where I was like, okay, you're bit dragging on with the references back to the future, where I'm like explaining, I'm like, okay, I was a fan of that. I'm gonna say it. I really was disappointed with the Man of Steel side of it. I'm like, I know Michael Shannon is great thought. I really wish they could have done something better, more with him. And I had a different reaction with George Clooney Batman. I went to a 2:45 screening of it in IMAX. There wasn't that much theater and there wasn't that much reaction. When George Clooney showed up, I just straight up laughed. I'm like, because I was thinking, oh my god, because I think, oh my god, they got George Clooney.
I think it's one of those things where the joke works because infamously he's kind of in the worst Batman movie, you know, and so you switch it to, a guy who's publicly apologized for the movie. But at the same time, it's had enough time in between and we've had enough good Batman content to where we all kind of go, yeah, but we all kind of like Batman and Robin as like a curiosity at this point, right? Like we all kind of have fun.
We're all in on the joke at this point.
Yeah, we're all like, we kind of have fun with that movie as a piece of silly entertainment at this point, right? Because it's not like you can't go watch The Batman or The Dark Knight or whatever and watch better Batman content. But that as a piece of curiosity, it's kind of fun now to look back on.
I got a better appreciation for Batman and Robin a couple years ago because my aunt and uncle came to visit, and their the little boys came over and hung out with me for a night. And Batman and Robin was actually their date movie. Their first date movie. Yeah. So I showed it to their kids who were younger than 10 at the time.
I liked it as a kid.
And that's what I was like, okay, so all right. So it definitely works better for kids movies because I thought about that in a long time. But yeah, no, I got a little bit of a better appreciation for it watching it with my cousins.
But let me go to Tato. Tato, what do you got overall?
Yeah. I gave this film 4 stars ultimately, and it does get a easy free half a star from me. We'll talk about that later when we get more into the details of the things. Ezra Miller was good. Overall, I'm going to echo Aaron's sentiments. The CGI didn't play for me. I get what they're saying about the Speed Bowl and why it looks that way. It still just kind of fell a bit flat for me. I really enjoyed Sasha Kai's performance, but yeah, she didn't get a ton to do, unfortunately, there. The Zod thing, yeah, I think we're all kind of in consensus on that one. Let's see. Keaton Batman, the score, that stuff all really works. Clooney, for me, the jokey, like the humor for the most part landed. I like the Eric Stoltz, the Back to the Future part, because I know we're gonna have as trivia players, I know we're gonna have a blast with that part in question asking.
Marty McFly.
It's not. It's your cat.
Well, who did they mention was in? Was Maverick instead of Tom Cruise?
Kevin
Bacon.
Bacon.
Oh yeah,
Bacon. Yeah, it's
and Michael J. Fox was the star of Footloose.
Yeah, right.
We're gonna have so much fun with that intro.
I was watching for background stuff in that scene in particular, and one thing that piqued my interest is I'm a huge Gremlins 2 fan. I love Gremlins 2, and the guy who's playing the keyboard the whole time was wearing a Gremlins 2 t-shirt. And I noticed even his thing had a slight alteration. It said something to the effect of "Don't feed them after noon." After midnight. So Gremlins and Gremlins 2 exist with somewhat different lore, which I thought, again, a nice touch. Somebody made a t-shirt with just, if you didn't pick up on it, if you weren't looking for it, it wasn't really there. But like I was looking for stuff like that on my second viewing, even posters in the background, whatever. And I just thought that was funny. Like that was a nice attention.
That's cool.
Richie, overall, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I probably liked it more than some of the suggestions out there. I thought it was really good, but yeah, it's fortunately no surprise that it doesn't shock me that it kind of bombed. Probably talked about it before it went on, but yeah, I guess the people not wanting to support Ezra Miller, and also the fact that it doesn't really tie into, not going to tie into
anything. It's in a dead universe that is
a dead universe, even though there's still articles out there that go, sequels in doubt. Like there was never in discussion. It's not going to happen. Like, and it's unfortunate because Aquaman 2 is still coming out, and that's good. I feel like it's going to bomb as well because it's like, it's like because that's like and I mean we could talk about it too. The credits, the end credit scene with Aquaman is pretty funny, but ultimately it's not going to mean anything. But yeah, overall the movie, I thought Ezra Miller was good. I didn't mind the younger bratty sort of Ezra, the Flash. I thought that was fine. The special effects didn't bother me as much as other people. I don't really see the hang up in there's not really many like realistic babies. I'm like, that would kind of take it out from that would make it weird for me. I was fine for what it was. And I thought that the CGI worked in the sense of like what the timeline was telling. Is it like I think we're getting to the point, and the internet doesn't help things, but like it does annoy me. Like we do get to the point like before the movie comes out, like maybe the media or just certain film parties like do tend to overpraise movies so much. It's just like, but where it's like, I mean, I'm sure movies are going to be good, but like your expectations get like skyrocket. Or how many times have you seen lately? It's like, oh, this movie got like a 10-minute ovation at Cannes from it. And it's like, this movie, no, this, everyone.
And for what it's worth, like the thing that they hit about the CinemaCon screening that sort of came out after the fact, and I will cite the source because if there's anything about this that's incorrect, I can directly point you to who said it, but John Roca on his podcast with Jeff Snyder said that he was at CinemaCon and attempted to go to the screening and was actually rejected. And apparently it was a specifically curated list of critics who were attending CinemaCon who in the past had been more favorable to DC and specific DC films even that more matched the tone of this movie than others. So it was only a certain allotment of people who were allowed into the theater in an attempt to angle the favor of this film and the reception it got in their favor, which I think is why it went the way that it did, because they were picking people who they thought would favor them. which is absolutely their right. You got to market your film any way that you can, but that screening wasn't what it was made out to be. That screening was made out by Warner Brothers. It's like, we're doing a screening for everyone here at CinemaCon. Come watch the movie, and then it got all this thunderous praise. And it's like,
it was almost like it was damage control, considering all the kind of the hesitation going into it because of the Ezra Miller, the Ezra Miller stuff. It's like,
So.
One last opening thought I want to add is that it was I think it's a good movie, but it just happened to be the third best comic book movie that came out within that month.
You're not wrong. It followed Spider-Verse, for fuck's sakes.
I don't understand why they didn't release this movie in like October or something. I think you could have done way better kind of by yourself somewhere. It's you cram it in with everything else.
The truth is they had four films left to put out. And I think they positioned these films in the places they thought they would do the best, right? Because Shazam came out in the spring last time, and it made a decent bit of money for its budgets. They put Shazam in the spring. Aquaman came out at Christmas. It made $1 billion at Christmas. They put it in Christmas. Blue Beetle takes the August spot because a lot of those unknown superheroes have sort of had success in that late summer slot. Like most popularized Guardians a few years ago did really well in that August spot. Ant-Man had July, but it was that same sort of late summer spot. A lot of those unknown characters tend to do a bit better in that area. So that was their thinking with Blue Beetle. Warner Brothers also has other movies coming out during that time. Cause I think in like a month span, they have Barbie, the Meg 2, and Blue Beetle all coming out. So they had to kind of figure out their calendar the best they could. And so that just leaves The Flash. And it's like at that point, early summer, because where else are the hell are you going to stick it? That's why I think it ended up where it did. All the others, there's a reason they're releasing where they're releasing. This one, I think they just had to stick somewhere where it wouldn't compete with another DC film.
Yeah. Spider-Verse.
Yeah, the only thing I probably add.
To be fair, though, I don't think anyone thought Spider-Verse was going to do as well as it did, because the last one didn't do.
I don't probably. Yeah, you're right. Probably not as gangbusters as it did, but I'm
well because I'm sure. Remember, right? Like Spider-Verse came out. Obviously, Spider-Verse has had a groundswell of success through being on Netflix for many years and things like that. But remember, 4 years ago or 5 years ago almost when Aquaman came out, right? That Christmas, there was a DC film, a Transformers film, a Spider-Verse film, and a Disney sort of legacy property in Mary Poppins. And Spider-Verse came forth of 4 with those films. But no one expected it.
But I do think it would be if you put Beyond the Spider-Verse against those other 3 movies, I think it would be the other way around. I think because enough time has passed, seen it, that there's more people who are going to go and flock to see this movie in theaters. Whereas
I'm not attacking. I'm not attacking Spider-Verse. The point that I'm trying to make is when you're Hollywood and you're analyzing releases, those 4 films directly competed against each other. Spider-Verse lost and DC won that Christmas.
Yeah.
In the last month, we've had a Spider-Verse film, a DC film, a Transformers film, and we've had another Disney legacy property come out in the Little Mermaid remake. It's literally the same competition happening again. We're just seeing what the progression of reception and franchises does to these films. But you can't account for that when you're trying to predict things a year in advance. And so that's where I think this happened. People thought Spider-Verse would do better, but no one thought it would do that much better. I mean, again, the first one opened to 34. The second one opened to 120. Yeah. Even the best of franchises don't have that exponential of growth from one film to the other. That's insanity that it opened that high. So you couldn't have predicted that.
Richie, what?
The only other thing I think I was going to mention about Flash in general. I think the thing that made the I think that Go Play Supergirls is fine, but I think they're talking about I read something. I was like, she's been talking to DC about or about maybe doing a prequel thing to her. I'm like, I don't know. I think they just muddled up the kind of universe. I'm not a huge. I don't know. I don't really need to see it again. See her character again necessarily. But also in regards to the George Clooney cameo, I think what makes that cameo so funny is not just because it's George Clooney and you don't expect it. It's just like the kind of I wasn't prepared for the F bomb. It was just like he's like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Yeah.
that was the
After seeing that, I immediately thought to myself, I want to see Clooney's take as old Bruce Wayne and beyond. I would love to see him take it.
Clooney had a hell of a swagger as an older Bruce Wayne, though, that I
Right?
always thought, as far as like, damn, you know what?
He always made a great Bruce Wayne.
Clooney in the chair, man. I'm kind of in. I'm kind of down for it, man.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
And for anyone curious, we'll move into the actual film in a minute. But does anyone know here, or does anyone not know, I should say, the story of how that cameo actually came about?
No, but I heard that there were supposedly multiple ones that aired.
So from what I've read and what I've heard about this, there was an ending that was planned for the film that included Affleck that they never shot, because obviously by the time they got to shooting, it was well known that Affleck was dipping after this film no matter what. The first ending they shot was with Keaton and Sasha Calle, and the intention behind that ending was to show that he didn't screw up the timeline any further, nor did he fix the timeline. He sort of merged the timelines, because he allowed his mother to die, but he still corrected things in the future that allowed his father to get off. And it shows that it's this kind of merging of the two. And so that was the direction they went. Then in November, they did an expanded reshoot on the scene where they brought back Keaton, they brought back Sasha Calle, they brought back Ezra Miller, who at that point had already had a sit down with DC, and they were like, okay, you're going to go quiet, you're going to do this, you're going to do this, and we're going to try and make this work. But, and they brought in Henry Cavill and Gal Gadot, and they reshot a new version of the scene with the five of them together.
I had heard she filmed a lot of shit that got cut. I had heard about that.
Yes, and that's where she also filmed her part at the beginning of the film, which they left in. That was not originally a part of the film. They filmed it after the fact with that. And so they filmed the scene with the five of them at the end, and that was, of course, off the back of Dwayne Johnson partnering with the people who took over Warner Brothers as a whole, and the whole Superman's back thing, and they shot this scene really quick to put into this movie to try and bolster that. Then Gunn came in, Cavill's out, obviously Gal Gadot's out as well. That was made public in the last week that she's also out, and so they reshot the ending again. Where Clooney came in was because Batgirl got canceled. And Batgirl was supposed to be a pseudo sequel to this film, where Keaton is now the Batman of this universe and Batgirl exists in this universe. That's where that came from. But because Batgirl was canceled, they didn't decide to bring Keaton back. And it was apparently a writers' meeting where they were trying to just come up with a new ending for the film, and someone jokingly threw out, "What if it was Clooney?" Just because, I don't know, people didn't like his take. What if it was Clooney? And that's exactly up James Gunn's alley. I believe it's like James Gunn is friends with Clooney's agent or something, and so he put in a call, got him to come to set. Apparently, Clooney, is a part of him doing the movie, also took like Ezra Miller to lunch and tried to give him some advice and talk to him a little bit and just, kind of figure things out with what's going on there. But Clooney did the scene. The reason Sasha Calle is not in the final scene is simply because of scheduling. Just was not available to go back for a third shoot to do this new ending, and thus she's not in it.
Well, and also, real quick, the CinemaCon stuff and all those really early screenings that were like 2-3 months ago.
It was a different ending again.
No, not so much as that. It was you saw a leg come out of the car, but they cut the movie right there, and you didn't see who it was. Yeah. And then so they saved the Clooney cameo for like the wide theatrical release, which is why that didn't get out, because literally nobody saw that.
Nobody knew.
I'm glad for that. It was great to have as a surprise. What I would like to see them do, though, is cast a Superman 2, this Supergirl, because I thought she was phenomenal in this movie. For what little she had, I thought she did a great job. I was all in. I liked her a lot.
So let's.
I had also heard that there was a shot of Pattinson, just while we're on that.
Yeah, I heard that one as well, which would have been like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, that scene was longer. There was more to that sequence that they chose to cut. That begs the question why they left in what they did, but there was more to it that got cut.
I want Pattinson to be separate from all this shit. Like,
me too.
Honestly, like I don't need that. Like the Clooney thing makes sense because technically he's kind of tied into the Keaton thing because they have the same Alfred, they have the same Commissioner Gordon. Technically, they're kind of in the same universe, so it would sort of make sense.
Easier.
Yeah, it's just easier. The Pattinson stuff I want in its own.
Nah, spaghetti. Who cares?
Yeah.
It would have been fun.
If
that was it. That for the it is
Right.
for the DCU. I think that would have been fun if there was no more movies involving Ezra Miller's Flash, all that stuff afterwards. I think it would have been a fun one. But no,
I was gonna say because we've talked more about the Clooney cameo than we have the actual movie, so I want to twist it back into the movie a little bit. So I'm just gonna sort of in turn throw out different discussion points, and you guys can sort of jump on what interests you. For me, the thing that stands out is the weakest element of the film, and I am going to take the pessimistic POV because while I didn't hate it, I clearly didn't like it as much as other people here, so I'll take the pessimistic POV. I thought the villains in this were weak. Michael Shannon's already come out and said that he did not enjoy shooting this film. His exact words were, "It wasn't fulfilling," which that's not how you promote a movie at all. That's bad rep 101. But and you can tell, man, he just looked disinterested. It didn't even look like he was on set half the time because his body's so covered in CG that it didn't even really need to have him there. I mean, he was there, but he didn't need to be. And yeah, you can just tell that he's going through the motions as an actor. And while I do like Michael Shannon a lot, he's got a very stone face. He's not very expressive unless he cares. So he does just kind of look dull through most of this. It's not a great performance. And the problem is most of the third act and the movie, to an extent, you're spent worrying about him as the final villain. So when the actual final villain shows up, which is an aged version of 2013 Barry, who's spent years resetting the timeline and resetting and going sort of deranged from it in an attempt to save his mother and Batman and his father and Kara and kill Zod and make everything work. There's just not enough, there's no impact in that. At least for me, there wasn't any impact in it because it's so rushed. You spent so much time with Zod as the villain and fighting Zod that by the time they actually reveal who that thing was that pushed him out of the timeline, it's oh, that's what that was earlier in the movie. And then he's dead because the first movement he makes, he stabs himself because 2013 Ezra Miller sacrifices himself. And then he kills himself and he dies. And it just, to me, I didn't like any of it personally. The concept is cool. On paper, the idea of using Zod as a fake out villain and then the real villain being this sort of decrepit, deranged version of an alternate Barry trying to save this timeline that the original Barry screwed up, almost as if you made this villain yourself. You created this monster. It's an interesting idea. I just don't think it was executed all that well because it is very rushed. Zod's not in it all that much. He doesn't get much development, but he gets too much screen time compared to the actual villain, who's only in it for a few minutes and then he's out. So for me, it didn't work.
So can I counter that point for just a second?
Sure.
So the movie's not designed to have a villain per se.
Right, Barry was the villain the whole time.
It's not designed to have a villain. If you think about what movie do they compare it to and make a lot of comparisons to? Eric Stoltz, right, in Back to the Future. Think about Back to the Future. People talk about Biff Tannen as a villain. He's not the villain of that movie. He's Crispin Glover's kind of adversary in that movie, kind of pseudo villain. The villain in that movie is time itself. Is timeline screwing up things? The main character kind of playing with time is the villain of that thing itself. Much like this, the villain is Barry's ego and Barry's desire to continue to fix things. There's not supposed to be a villain. Zod, they just happen to go back to this area where it is a thing with Zod, but he's more of the Zod and Supergirl thing is more of a MacGuffin for the time thing. And same even with Keaton to a degree. It's not designed to have a villain. So I mean, I get what you're saying, but not every movie has to have a central villain that they're fighting because that's ancillary to the plot. That this timeline is going to happen regardless. So they just stumble into it. It's not the villain.
I see where you're coming from, but I would disagree that this movie doesn't have a villain because I can definitely agree with you with the Zod thing, but they work into the plot of this movie that the thing that pushes Barry into 2013 to set off this chain of events is that villainous Flash himself. And so in that sense, he is the villain of the film. He is the thing that chain starts this whole thing. Once he's eliminated from the timeline, Barry is able to fix things, so to speak, the best that you can. So no, I would say he is the main villain of the film. He is the main antagonist, and it's a cool idea, but it just for me it didn't connect.
If you break down stories, there are only 7 types of conflicts, and this does fall into one of them. This falls into the person versus person conflict, and I think it does a great job. Like I was one of those guys. I figured it right away who the villain was.
Well, yeah. I mean,
probably because I've read the comic.
It's the Flash.
Yeah. It's
they had 9 seasons of a TV show, and I think over half of them were either a speedster or more specifically a variant of Barry. So
I can't tell you how many comic books I've read where the characters have gone back in time and you see other perspectives, like this of something that's happened in the past. So I don't know, maybe it's because I looked at comic book movies a little bit differently, but I thought I thought all those things worked. Although I do see where you are coming from, I thought it worked.
But it's not a traditional. There's a villain, there's a hero or heroes, and the villain is propelling the film forward via his actions that the heroes have to react to. You know, as in with Man of Steel, where Zod comes to Earth and he is propelling the story forward. With Thanos and Infinity War, where his goal to get the stones is propelling the plot forward, and they are reacting to that. It's not designed to be like that in a traditional sense, to where there's a main villain pushing things forward. It's his own actions that cause his own consequences that he has to fix himself, that he himself is causing. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not in that traditional way of like,
traditional storytelling, man versus man, man versus nature, man versus self, blah blah blah.
Right,
exactly.
I get that. But then if you want to go down that route, Zod is the main antagonist then, because his actions don't drive the plot forward in this, not in the way of Man of Steel, but his presence does. Barry doesn't seek out the Justice League to try and reset the timeline and get himself back where he needs to be. That comes as a result of, oh shit, Zod's here.
But he also realizes
take this guy
he's
down.
in a timeline where Zod wins regardless, so he can't do a damn thing about it. He's just in a certain timeline. I understand that, but it works on that second viewing when you realize he's trying to stop something that is inevitable. He's in a timeline where you can't stop him.
I've not seen the film. I've not seen the film twice. Yeah. But I also feel like seeing a film twice should enhance something. I shouldn't have to see it twice at least for me, I shouldn't have to see it twice to figure that part out.
It enhanced it for me because I ironed out a couple of the story questions I had were solved in certain bits of dialogue. I saw certain perspectives on things. The Barry thing, the second Barry that people talk about, and that's another thing we can kind of get into, but the other Barry performance, I didn't pick up that the original Barry comments on that throughout the movie where he's like, oh, Jesus Christ, I see what people hate about me now because of you.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, and he's just like, God, do you always talk this much? Like, holy shit. Like, and to be fair, if any one of us went back, and maybe Aaron excluded because you're still in your early 20s, but like I'm 37, so like if I went back to my 16-year-old self and talked to myself, I would probably think I was fucking annoying too. You know,
and,
like
and
we would all
say,
think that.
Like
it's designed that way.
I criticize that portrayal as I think it's just as bad as the version they did in the other film, because I did not like Barry in Justice League. I didn't really like him in either version of Justice League. But I agree with you that in terms of the storytelling, that's absolutely the correct decision to make. And I like that they did that. I like that they, showed the progression of time by having this version of Barry be more mature, and then B, having the alternate Barry essentially be the same Barry we saw in the other films, because he was about that age, but with a little more confidence because he had his mom.
Well,
and he never went through
when
everything.
you also go back, and again, I'm talking about watching it again, but I'm saying that's why I think it still holds up on a repeat viewing, is that they also are playing this dynamic where the Barry that we follow for the most part has also had this tragedy of having his mother killed and his dad in prison. The other Barry did not. He is pampered. Right, yeah. He is a spoiled little, like,
he had a normal life.
He had a normal life, and he could be a slacker, do nothing, nobody. He hadn't had to mature in such a quick fashion that other Barry did, you know, because of the loss of his parents, essentially. So there's a dynamic going on there that I think some people didn't quite pick up on, that I picked up on way more, again, on a subsequent viewing, which is why I think some movies like this, like, kind of deserve that.
I was gonna say
like,
I got at least for me, I got that on the first go around, and I
Yeah.
would say I compliment that is something I would compliment about the film. I don't think it's horribly written. Like even the stuff I'm criticizing in conception, I actually do like the concepts of it. It's just the execution didn't wholly work for all of it. But I don't just want this to be the three of us going back and forth. We do have
Yeah,
other
right.
panel members. So I want to throw it down to you guys just for your thoughts on some of it. And the problem is it's also three guys who aren't as quick to cut us off. So I want to throw it down to you guys.
What when you do?
I also go into battleground mode sometimes where I'm like defending point counterpoint, where I'm just like, yeah, but like if you look at the movie this way,
Yeah,
like,
no, that's why I started judging.
Yeah,
that was a
okay,
tight.
so,
that was a great round, both of
you know,
you.
I
am going to give my.
go down to you guys, and I'll throw out another sort of just discussion point, and I'll throw it to you guys just to give you something a little more to talk about as well. And I'll throw like something that was brought up was the my mind just went blank. I'll just throw it to you guys. Let me think about that for a second. I'll throw it down to which one of you guys wants to go.
I'll just throw a thought that is I have to mention it because of the Kevin Smith fucking third act. Fucking Thanagarian Snarebeast shows up, and Nicolas Cage.
So, you're watching the movie, and I'm sitting against people I guess who didn't know about the whole Death Superman list. So we're watching it, and I'm going, yeah, and I hear beside me, is that fucking Nicolas Cage?
Yeah. I had to explain it to my dad on the drive on the way home. So
that was the one where I laughed audibly.
Although he, as an older guy, appreciated the George Reeves stuff though, because he grew up watching that shit.
Once I saw
that was cool.
I knew where they were going. I knew they were going, and I was in love with it. I love that.
Awesome.
On that topic, all of that worked for me. Big thumbs up. I have no problem with what they did with those actors.
Yeah.
Richie, I'll go to you if you want to throw anything out about the film in general.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess I was going to mention the Nicolas Cage thing, so that threw me. But yeah, I think me and Austin talking briefly before before I saw it, just that there was hinted that there was a thing for like geek, it just suits people for like Superman geeks, and I think that was when I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that's probably what he's referring to. But yeah, I wasn't expecting to see that, but that was a nice throwback. But yeah, so I think that was done really well. But yeah, I don't know. Ultimately, yeah, I tend to, I agree with Austin about like the how like the younger Barry, the dynamic between younger Barry and sort of the old Barry, how it works, and why be different. So again, I didn't have like a much of an issue with the film in general. I don't really have like a lot more to add that you haven't already added, but like if you want to, if someone else wants to throw something in there.
I will say this.
I was going to say I was going to go to Kevin just because he's been more silent as well. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to throw out this one comment. It's not really a discussion comment, but I made me wish that John Schnepp was still around to see that fucking.
Yeah, no, for sure. That would have
bro.
Oh, he was the first person I thought
that would have been like a lifetime achievement award, essentially.
100%.
Oh man, you're making me cry.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, that was all I wanted to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably. I'm probably the one that's like, I hated the George Reeves, Christopher Reeves scene, visual scene. It's like, this is really disturbing and wrong. I'm like, and the voice, I'm like, there's something off about this, and I'm not excited. I'm like, and this wrong with so many levels. I can't. Then it was Cage when I'm like, oh my god, I never thought I would ever see the date of this. I'm like, but okay, I'm like, that would I appreciate the reference. But I think I'm like, there is a way they could have done this better. I'm like, they could at least posted the scene from the original movies that could have. I'm like, that one I wouldn't mind. I'm like doing the original scenes of those movies. I'm like, that could have worked. I'm like, that could work, but when
finish your.
When you kind of visually enhance, like, brings those characters to life, I'm like, nope, that's the turn off. That I can't.
I don't know. I don't know if you would want to do a whole scene from the original movie. I think I thought it would be better.
Yeah,
I think
using stock footage would be weird to me because then it's just like,
using
we're
No,
just showing the stock
I
footage.
so
is
again,
strange.
I get this is just you're like talking about like counterpoint like that. I'm on Kevin's side with this because again, as I said, and I do agree with you. I could hear you guys while I was out of the room. I do agree with you. I want to say because I said the visual effects weren't great in this movie. They clearly invested a lot of their time and money into making sure that Barry looked seamless throughout this film. And in that aspect, they fucking succeeded. I don't want to take anything away from that element of it. The bit like that is some of the best dual actor on screen shit that we have ever seen, especially because 90% of the shots are them standing right next to each other. Oftentimes you will find that like when they do things like that, they have to do it. They have to have like static shots the way
Or
that
like I
the
said,
Social
even
Network is,
embracing
or they
each
have
other,
to do
carrying each other,
the
like
back to
literally,
back or
the interaction is incredible.
That's what the
but
George
so
Lucas
but what
was.
well, I was gonna say so that stuff looks great, but to follow up on Kevin's point, it was cool that if they were gonna do cameos in this film, they went with like the classic stuff. Like that was a lot of fun to see, but it looked, at least to me, it looked like dog shit and it looked creepy seeing like this AI generated Christopher Reeve fly up onto screen with a deep faked face that they pulled out of the archive. It looked weird as shit. I think a discolored shot of him flying from the movie or something to make it look like it's in a time portal thing would have looked way better than just this doll of Christopher Reeve flying up to the screen and then Helen Slater joining him and they just stare at the screen. It did not work for me at all.
But again,
the
they
concept
do it
was
in the
cool,
context
but it
of
was
this
ugly.
like chronodome time bubble where like everything's distorted though, and they're looking in on this window that opens up on their universe. Again, like I don't see what else
No, that's
you
an
do.
excuse, man. You can
Showing,
make that look better.
but you look at the stuff that happens around them when they're spinning the things back and forth, and it's like that's the way it's designed though.
And
Like
it's an ugly design.
well, you could say it's you don't like the design, but to say that that's like ugly because you think it's ugly, even though that's the way it's designed, it's weird.
Some kid will make them better in the next 2 weeks and get hired by James Gunn.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's just it feels like they did. It feels like they designed all that last minute. Like it feels like there was no love or care put into it.
I know what does looking at reality inside of a chrono time bubble supposed to look like? I don't know.
I don't know, but it shouldn't.
Well, then they could have fucking smeared dog shit all over the screen, and by that logic, fucking bro, I don't know what a chronodome looks like. Maybe it's dog shit on a film lens.
It could have looked fucking animated like a goddamn cartoon. Who gives a shit?
It could have looked like Spider-Verse, and you wouldn't have made it through the film.
Yeah. What surprised me is there's the Arrowverse right there. I'm like, why not include them as well? There's also the animated film universe as well. Why not include them? I'm like, there are other stuff in them, or even include the 90s Flash movie series.
Can I just say that the dumbest thing that I've heard of in a while is the version of Jay Garrick they used, and like just off look, everybody's like, that looks like the guy who played Zoom on the Flash.
Yeah,
and then he had to come out.
Well.
He had to come out and be like, I don't know, man, I didn't get a paycheck for that, so I don't think it's me. And then DC was like, it wasn't inspired by anyone, and it's like, yeah, I don't know, man. Again, it clearly with this film, we're at an agree to disagree standpoint.
Yeah.
I can see from a visual, like I can see what Muschietti's trying to say in that they had a visual style they were going for. I just don't think they executed it well. I think you can do that style and still make the CG look better because there are scenes in the movie where it looks better. It doesn't look ugly the entire time. Like a lot of the other Chromodome stuff, it does look good. Like like even before that scene where they're racing in and out of that little sphere to try and reverse time, those effects look really good. During that action sequence, that looked all perfectly fine. But then you get to the past figures, and it's like they're sticking glass-eyed dolls on screen. Like just something about it was.
But again, what
tricky.
are you supposed to do when these people aren't alive? Or you don't have footage.
Use archive footage.
No, but like that's a cheap thing.
Footage to have Superman and Supergirl together.
That's cheap of just like, oh, we're just gonna insert 5 seconds of Superman the movie, then you would be on here complaining that that's cheap and fucking stupid.
That's what they
You're
No,
doing
I,
the same
honestly,
thing.
no, I wouldn't, because the
Yeah.
opposite of it is if
That's
you
already been
can't
done,
execute
though.
it well, don't do it at all.
That's already been done. That was done in the Flash season 1, the finale. The finale.
I don't watch the.
I thought it was good, but could have been done, but could be done better.
Again, this goes back to at least my thoughts on the film, which is good idea, bad execution.
Mhm.
I like what they were going for, and I like the picks that they chose. I like that it wasn't all the most recent versions of those characters. I would much rather see a instead of a Henry Cavill Superman, I would much rather see a Nick Cage Superman. That's a much more impressive idea. And even I didn't think that shot looked all that bad. And that was also clearly animated without any kind of real.
The second shot of Christopher Reeve, the second one they go back to, looks way better than the original one. Actually, if you go back and watch it.
But also
the one they focus on doesn't look good.
I think they got Cage for that.
Yeah,
I think that might be mocap.
Cage was there, I believe.
Cage was there, so that might be why that one works a little bit better.
Doing I don't know, like with Kevin's idea, like putting actual clip. I think the thing that sort of works better is the sort of like the kind of subtlety, like that's whenever, like if you just go put clips in there, you're like they'll be like, hey, get it, that's from that movie. Oh, that's from that. I don't know. It would take me out of the I don't know. It would take me out of the movie when you're just kind of just borrowing clips from other films. And be like, yeah, get it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just maybe
that would be like fan trailery. We're like, I'm going face to face with Christopher Reeve Superman, so I'm gonna look this direction while Christopher Reeve from the movie looks this direction. Like that would be cheap as shit and would look terrible. Like the point of the scene is that they are also.
So, by the way, to answer the question about Cage, he shot the movement of the character on the volume, and then CGI was used to de-age him and put him in the suit.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, that
which is why I would say I don't think that looks as bad as the others, because there was at least a human underneath it that they CG'd
that's why that one works. That one was the best one. I like it because to me, they're acknowledging their past. They're acknowledging where they came from.
Why wouldn't Why wouldn't you do what Star Wars has done? Right? Look at Luke Skywalker. That look.
That was the joke I was making about the kid.
Right. But I'm saying in terms of not about the art, like hiring the artist. Why wouldn't you just get stand-ins to stand in those shots for Superman and Supergirl, and then CGI over them to make them look closer to the character? That would have looked at least a bit better. Because Nick Cage did look, and I don't think you guys would disagree with me on this. Nick Cage, even if you don't hate the visual effects in that scene, Nick Cage looked noticeably better than a lot of the rest, and it's because there was a real person.
Yeah.
So I'd argue, why didn't you do that? Why did you just feel the need to use AI and deepfake to recreate whole
they didn't for all of them. They didn't for all of them. The George Reed one was taken straight from the opening credits of the show. That one, and then the Adam West one was also taken, if I'm not mistaken, from the movie. So the only two that were actually animated were Superman, Supergirl, and Nick Cage. Those were the only two, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So we got both of them. We got some archival footage and we got the animated. So
yeah. Again, we're at a point of, because we could probably debate back and forth all night. It is a case, and again, I should say, I'm taking the pessimistic perspective because it creates discussion. I didn't hate this film. In fact, as we'll start to move towards a wrap up, and I'll let you guys throw out any more points you had. Obviously, anything we didn't get to touch on. Like to give, because every week Matt and I have been giving our scores. Matt has not seen the film yet, so I don't have a score from him to report. But I gave the film a 6. I think it's fine. I don't think it's anything exceptional. Would I see it again in a theater? Sure. Am I going to go out of my way to see it? No, personally. But like if I'm there and I'm planning a movie day, would I see it? Sure. I don't think it's a horrible film. But I think to me, it is a case of, on paper, I like what they were going for. I just don't think they executed all of it as well as they could have. If Muschietti's excuse is that's the style they were going for in certain scenes, that's fine. But some of it clearly looks better than others. And the ones that look bad pulled me out of the movie. And I'm not someone to complain about visual effects often. I defended Ant-Man's visual effects, which a lot of people shitted on. And I didn't have an issue with that at all, because to me, that's a case of, well, it's a largely fictional world. They're shooting on what is still admittedly experimental tech in the volume. It's still new in the grand scheme of things to shoot on something like that, and mixing that in green screen, blue screen rooms. It's new tech to an extent. And we were off the back of Avatar when Ant-Man came out, so anything looked like shit compared to Avatar that had, 7 years to get its VFX in order. This just didn't look great at times to me. Again, I'm 50-50 on the cast. I think Ezra Miller does turn in a good performance, even in the version of the character I didn't love. I like that they went that direction with it, and I think they do turn in a good performance. I like Keaton a lot. I liked his parents. I should say Ron Livingston replacing Billy Crudup. I think he did a good job. Obviously, Crudup didn't have enough time with the character in his appearance in Zack Snyder's Justice League, but I think that Livingston does a good job here. I like Kiersey Clemens' Iris. Again, another, not in the film very much element, but I did like her character, and obviously they're not going to continue this, but if they were to continue this, I think they had good enough chemistry that they could certainly grow on that in future installments. It's just a case of, on paper, I think they had a lot of great ideas. It didn't all hit for me. But that's my kind of final thought on it. We'll go around just very briefly. We'll start down with you, Richie. Was there just anything you didn't get to bring up that you wanted to touch on briefly?
Not really. There's nothing really that like. I mean, I know I didn't really discuss at length with anything, but there's nothing that really like sticks in my craw about this movie. It's not like, but yeah, other than like the overpraise of it, I guess, just because. But that's just going to happen with films these days. Unfortunately, I don't know. Just the age of the internet, but yeah, I think it's a lot better than it could have been given all the delays and whether we didn't even know it was going to come out, because it was supposed to come out 2019, 2018, and it finally comes out, and unfortunately by the time it comes out it doesn't it doesn't really tie into anything. So as a result, I think that kind of affected the film. But as an overall film, I think it still does a good job. It's better than it has any right to be, given all the barriers it faced. I think Ezra Miller is good, but it is sort of rough watching them in this film, because I don't really want to support them at all. But yeah, I think they're good. I think the cast is alright. Pretty good for the most part. It wasn't like overly thrilled. Again, I can't remember her name. She could play as that Supergirl, but she was alright.
Sasha Kanye.
Yeah, but I'm not. It's not. Again, it's not like. That's something I'm like clamoring to see her again. I there was something from Kevin Smith or something that said that if this movie did well, that we would get a Batman Beyond movie, but obviously this movie's not doing well, so they're probably not. So yeah, I don't know. I had there's no really glaring issues I have with this movie. The CGI, I think looked at a certain point because of where it was in the sort of time loop. I didn't have an issue with it. So yeah, overall it was really good. It's not going to crack my top 10 or anything, but I didn't have any issues with it. So I'd probably give it around 7.5.
Jake, any closing final thoughts briefly?
The batshit joke worked for me. That was fucking hilarious. And just in general, the batshit in the movie.
Great time to
hearing that music. Yep. So all the bat stuff was good, which makes me excited for Andy Muschietti's Brave and the Bold.
We'll come back to that in a second.
Hey, oops, sorry. I'm a terrible person. Overall, probably in that 7.5 territory, but again, gets bumped up to an 8 for me because of Thanagarian Snare Beast. When movies do things basically specifically for me, I gotta respond in kind and say, hey, I appreciate the nod. So yeah, like the film, acting pretty much good. Good stuff. Just happened to be third best comic book movie in that month span.
Kevin, brief closing thoughts.
Enjoyed for what I got out of it. There's some music. I love the music. I thought that you did a really great job with with the original score and also blending well with his rendition of Danny Elfman's score of the Batman. I thought it was really good. The climax part, I'm still wasn't much a fan of. All the stuff involving the berries and Storyline is really great. It really is the best part. And of course, Ezra, given what they've done, it still give a good performance in the movie. That all I could say, no matter what all those things as was said, it's still unforgivable, and does not lose that. I'd say 3 out of 5 for me. Pretty much with what it is.
Matt.
Yeah, this is the best finale they could have done given what came before, and I think they did a great job with what they had. This is a movie I like I said, I'm looking forward to rewatching it. I am thinking about going to see it again this weekend. I don't know. So I too would give it 8 out of 10. It's definitely rewatchable for me.
Yeah, no, I like the story. I thought the writing was pretty good, especially it held up on a second watch for me as far as story wise. I think most of the humor works. They didn't overdo it, you know. I didn't find really any of the humor kind of cringy or anything like that. I thought it worked within the context of the characters. Yeah, I know I didn't even talk that much about Keaton, but I think Keaton's having a blast here. I think he's having a lot of fun. Doing what he does. Yeah, they use the music cues right. Whichever stunt guy they have do like the fight scene, in the power plant, he did a great job. Because obviously it wasn't him. But I think he's still got the he's still got the bat look. He can still brood with the best of them. In the actual costume, I think he still looked great. And he did what he was. My only thing that I wish they had done. God damn it! Why couldn't he fire up that Batmobile at some point, man? Like shit, I wanted him to fire up that Batmobile at least once. Like it was there. Like I just want to see the flames come back out, kick the music on one more time, and fire up that Batmobile. That's the only thing I missed in the movie that I think they could have done, but with him at least at some point. But hey, what are you gonna do? Maybe he did it in the Batgirl movie that we'll never see. Who knows?
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know. It worked on a second screening for me. I think it still held up pretty well. Again, it's a good. If you're a DC geek, I think you'll have fun with it. It works, and in that sort of No Way Home vibe, I think it still does. I'm with Matt. It's like a solid 8 out of 10. There's like 8 or 9 movies I saw in theaters this year that are higher than it, so it probably won't even crack my top 10, which is fine. It was one of my most anticipated, but I don't have any problem with it being like not in that top 10. Cracking or anything like that. I can fully admit that and be honest about my thoughts, but I still thought it was entertaining and worth watching. So.
It was very convenient for Michael Keaton to have the spaghetti there for his time loop metaphor. It's just like, yeah, I thought that was funny. I was like, it's like spaghetti. That's something you thought about for a while.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close out the show here. We'll do one final topic, and I'll do it in the buy or sell format just to sort of speed it up as we are over the 2-hour mark here. And it is, again, it's another sort of discussion point that's been on the internet, which is, should Andy Muschietti actually be the director of Batman the Brave and the Bold? Because no matter what your personal thoughts are on the movie, right? Obviously, we all have varying across the board personal thoughts. At the end of the day, the movie received a mixed critical reception. It received kind of a dud reception from the audience overall. It's grossly underperforming at the box office. As of latest tracking right now, it's looking like the best it's going to finish this weekend is 4th place. No Hard Feelings is going to debut higher than it, and Spider-Verse and Elemental actually are both holding better than this movie right now. I think the latest I saw was anywhere between 12 and 15 million is the estimate they're giving it to come in that 4th or 5th place spot. It's competing right now with Asteroid City, which is not good, obviously. And so at the end of the day, you can say whatever you want about the outsource of this film, but at the helm of it is Andy Muschietti. And of course, right before this film was announced, he was given the helming of Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is set to be the Batman reboot for the upcoming DC universe. He becomes the 3rd director to join the universe alongside James Gunn and James Mangold. So we'll do the quick buy or sell, just a brief 30 seconds on it, your thoughts on it. I'll start with you, Austin. Do you buy or sell Andy Muschietti being kept on as the director of the film?
My only hang up is I don't like when directors start to get pigeonholed into something right after, they do a project like this. I would like to see, I think Andy Muschietti's proven he's a guy who could do a bunch of different things, like the two It movies. The first one is really good as like a horror movie and sort of a teenage sort of coming of age movie. Say what you will about the second one, it's got awkward stuff, it's a little too long, maybe a little too jokey, but I still think aesthetically it's a pretty solid movie. I would just like to see him branch out and do some other stuff, like rather than just go right to another comic book movie. I understand if they're, especially one that's not in continuity with this, like that's weird to me. It's fine if like James Gunn, does the three Guardians movies because he's got that down, and but does kind of other things in between. But yeah, I'll sell it only just because I'd like to see what else Andy Muschietti can do with like a sci-fi movie or some other action movie or something, rather than just do another comic book movie.
Matt?
I'm buying this. One, because the results of the box office are many causes, but none of them are Andy Muschietti's fault, in my opinion. Two, we've seen people brought on for projects right afterwards and they've had worse movies in theaters. And three, Andy Muschietti, unlike The Flash, where he's like the third director on that one. This one, at least he gets to build it from the ground up. So I think that's something that will definitely work in his favor.
Kevin?
I'm gonna buy it. I see what Andy Muschietti been through with the Flash. I think all the crazy stuff that happened, and managed to still pull it off. I think he can do a really good job. Probably, I think he might have other projects as well. But since the Superman Reborn is going to be the first one coming out, so I'm thinking, yeah, I think he can do it. So I buy
it. Jake?
Yeah, I'm not much of a horror cat, so I haven't seen any of his other films, but I already said my piece. He nailed the Batman stuff in this film, so I'm fine with him doing a Batman film in general, and I don't think any of the problems with this film are to pin on him, as has been mentioned.
And then Richie.
Yeah, I buy it. I don't think. Yeah, I guess none of the underlying issues are with Muschetti's fault. I think the main issues are Ezra Miller and to this not tying into anything, and maybe the mixed reception. But yeah, so and yeah, like people. I think Hollywood is a business where what you've done for me lately, and people people be clouded by all the box office numbers and maybe the mixed reception of this, and forget that it is one of the most profitable horror movies of all time. The movie made a lot of money, and he was behind it, and but so yeah, yeah, and he did do good with the Batman stuff. So yeah, I do see what Austin's saying with the whole pigeonhole thing, and I don't want it to, hopefully he does get a chance to do other stuff, because I think there is talent there. But yeah, I will buy it for now. I don't want him to get taken off a project just because of the box office performance of Flash, because the direction wasn't the issue with the film. So I don't think he should be punished for something that wasn't his fault.
Fair enough. So the first thing I'll run through, because it was commented on real quick, and I decided to fact check myself because I've read into this before. Andy Muschietti is technically, depending on who you talk to, the 7th or 8th director that was attached to this film. Mm-hmm. Technically, the origins of this project date as far back as 2004, well before the DCEU was a thing, because remnants of those early scripts were still kind of used and mutated and continued and used. And but technically, the 8 directors that were attached at various points in order were David S. Goyer, Sean Levy, David Dobkin. Then it was Seth Grahame-Smith was supposed to make his directorial debut on it. Phil Lord and Chris Miller were involved at one point. Rick Famuyiwa was involved. Then it was John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. And then, of course, there were the directors they talked to, which include Robert Zemeckis, Matt Vaughn, Mark Webb, Jordan Peele, and Sam Raimi, all of whom had meetings about the film but were never actually attached to it. So if we're saying 8th director, that is just people who signed on. So, yeah, needless to say... I'm just gonna say the fact that this movie got made is a miracle. Let's just put that there.
I was just going to say, Francis Daly and what was it, Goldstein and like Gordon Miller, like they could do a good job, but it might fall into the category of like maybe like Thor: Love and Thunder or something like that, where it might be too.
And for what it's Goldstein and Daly still retains story credit, so their screenplay was used as the basis for what they moved forward.
Okay, well then maybe I'm wrong there.
But with that said, and going back to the question, someone mentioned that, so I decided to look it up because I've done this research before for something. I'm gonna buy that Muschietti stays on, if only because. And this is more funny enough, Austin, we were going back and forth about the realism part of Hollywood. James Gunn may be a studio head now, but he's also a director with buddies in the industry. And I think eventually James Gunn's going to have to make a creative decision for this universe that's going to piss people off. But I think he has enough faith in Muschietti as a person and as a director that booting him because this film failed is not that decision that he's going to make. It's going to be something else down the road that I think it's going to have to happen eventually. It comes with running a studio. But I think he hired Muschietti on. He clearly trusts him. I agree with the multiple people that said it. The Batman stuff is the best stuff in this film, so I buy him staying on. But with that said, though, we're going to go ahead and close out the show. I want to say thank you to Austin for stepping into the co-host spot for Matt and doing a little more of the heavy lifting on the discussion part. Thank you, sir, for being here. Thank you to Soda, Tato, we'll get the food-related nicknames out of the way first. Kevin and Richie as well for joining us to talk about the news and the Flash. Guys, next week, the plan is we are going to do probably a very brief discussion on No Hard Feelings because it's not exactly a film you can spend an hour talking about, but that said, we can still talk about it because it was the big release. But the plan next week is we're going to be doing a spoiler discussion on the first 2 episodes of Secret Invasion, which is currently airing on Disney+. We decided behind the scenes that rather than doing a week-to-week thing with that show, we'll do the first 2 episodes because that's the setup, and then we'll probably come back to it once it's over. So we will be discussing that next week in addition to No Hard Feelings and, of course, all the latest news and movie topics. Matt should be back next week, so we'll be back to normal on that sense, but we will have a new show for you. That said, guys, be sure to support all these other guys' endeavors, specifically, Austin, you're over on the Movie Hero Network. Soda, you also have a channel. Remind me of the name, please. I apologize.
Got the Northern Entertainment Group and Sodagan Wrestling.
There we go, guys. Be sure to support their endeavors. The others are on different things across different channels, so be sure to support, of course. Check out the movie Battleground. We are actively back airing matches. We have one more week in the month of June where we'll be doing a Monday through Friday airing, and then we will be back to our regularly scheduled version of the show in July. Which, of course, is leading up to moving in towards the end of the year. We have more big matches coming up. We're beginning recording for the tournament about a month from now. That won't air till later in the year, but you guys will hear about it as it's happening. Not who wins, who's involved. I should stress that. I'm not that much of an asshole. I want people to watch the matches. With that said, guys, thank you for being a part of this. Tune in next week. Until then, take care.